The desert doesn't forgive. It bakes everything under that relentless sky. Hope, memory, the difference between right and wrong. By the time the sun hits its peak over Red Hollow, most folks have learned to keep their heads down, their mouths shut, and their dreams buried somewhere they won't dig them up again. That's what 5 years of Victor Hale will do to a place. The town wasn't always like this. There were good years once, when the mines still produced silver and the railroad promised to push through. Back then, Red Hollow had 3 saloons, a church with a bell that actually rang, and enough optimism that people built 2-story houses they planned to fill with children. Then the silver ran thin. The railroad chose a different route, and Victor Hale arrived with contracts that looked like salvation but read like surrender. Now the church bell hangs silent, cracked straight through. 2 of the saloons are boarded up. The houses that aren't empty are occupied by people who've forgotten what it means to own something, really own it, not just occupy it at Hale's pleasure. Lena Voss stands behind a second-floor window of the Red Hollow Hotel, the only lodging establishment still operating, though operating is a generous word. Her fingers grip the weathered curtain so hard her knuckles have gone white. She's been standing here for 20 minutes, watching the street below, watching the heat shimmer off the hard-packed dirt like the whole town is dissolving. She's 34 years old, looks 48. That's what rage does when you feed it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's what happens when every waking moment for the past 6 years has bent toward a single purpose: getting him here. The writer appears at the east end of town like a mirage gaining substance. Lena's breath catches. She's seen photographs, grainy, unreliable things that could have been any lean man in a dark coat. She's read descriptions from witnesses who swore the details were accurate, though no 2 descriptions ever quite matched. She's traced his movements through 4 territories, following a trail of resolved conflicts and vanished criminals like breadcrumbs through a dark forest. But seeing Colt Mercer in the flesh is different. He doesn't hurry. His horse, a gray mare that's seen as many hard miles as its rider, walks with the steady patience of something that knows running just delays the inevitable. The man sits easy in the saddle, but there's nothing relaxed about him. He's coiled, a spring compressed so long it's forgotten it was ever loose. From this distance, Lena can make out the long coat despite the heat, the wide-brimmed hat pulled low, the way his right hand rests on his thigh about 6 inches from where his gun must hang. Everything about his posture says he's paying attention to nothing in particular and everything all at once. The street empties as he passes. It's not dramatic. No one runs, no one screams, they just fade. A woman carrying a basket turns into an alley. 2 men talking outside the shuttered mercantile find urgent business elsewhere. A child playing in the dust gets yanked inside by his mother, and the door doesn't just close, it locks. Within 30 seconds of Colt Mercer entering Red Hollow, the main street is a ghost town, all except for 5 men positioned with the kind of deliberate spacing that says this isn't random. Lena recognizes them. Hard not to. They're Hale's inner circle, the ones who do the work that even Hale's regular enforcers won't touch. There's Dutch Carver, built like a bull and twice as mean, standing outside what used to be the assayer's office. Younger Tommy Pike has positioned himself near the water trough, and Lena knows he's the type to shoot first and feel bad about it later, though later never seems to arrive. The Rodriguez brothers, Miguel and Carlos, flank the opposite side of the street. They're professionals, the kind who don't talk much because they don't need to prove anything. And in the center of it all, standing in front of the bank he owns, the land office he controls, and the future he believes he's purchased, Victor Hale. He's not a big man. That's what always surprised people who'd only heard the stories. Maybe 5'10", slender build, with the kind of hands that have signed documents, not dug ditches. He wears a suit even in this heat, tailored, Eastern-made, the kind that costs more than most families in Red Hollow earn in a year. His hair is slicked back with pomade that must be melting in this sun, and his mustache is trimmed with the precision of a man who believes details matter. Because to Victor Hale, everything matters. Every word in a contract, every witness to a signature, every bullet point in a legal brief that transforms theft into legitimate acquisition. He's the kind of evil that shakes your hand while taking you home. Lena watches Colt Mercer bring his horse to a stop about 50 yards from where Hale stands. The distance is deliberate, far enough to survey the situation, close enough to make clear he's not backing down. For a long moment, nobody moves. The whole scene could be a photograph, One of those daguerreotypes where everyone has to hold perfectly still or the image blurs. Then Hale speaks. His voice carries. He's practiced at making himself heard without shouting. Another skill of men who rule without touching a gun themselves. I don't believe we've had the pleasure, friend. Colt doesn't respond immediately. He's still taking inventory, checking sight lines, measuring distances, noting where the sun will be in everyone's eyes. Lena has studied enough about him to know that's how he works. Most men think gunfighting is about being fast. Colt Mercer understands it's about being prepared. Not here for pleasure, Colt finally says. His voice is quieter than Hale's, but somehow fills more space. Here for business. Well, then you've come to the right place, Hale says, and he's got that smile working, the one that makes him look reasonable. I'm always interested in discussing business opportunities. Why don't you step down, come inside, we'll have a drink, and your business, Colt interrupts, is concluded. The smile doesn't leave Hale's face, but something behind his eyes sharpens. I'm afraid I don't follow. Yeah, you do. Dutch Carver shifts his weight. It's subtle, just a redistribution that brings him a half step closer to a shooting stance. Colt's eyes flick toward him. Not his head, just his eyes. And Dutch goes still like a rabbit that spotted a hawk. Hale notices. Of course he notices. He didn't build an empire by missing details. You've got me at a disadvantage, friend. You know my name, but I don't know yours. Mercer. Hale's face doesn't change, but Lena sees his fingers twitch. Just once. Just enough to tell her the name means something. The Mercer, Hale asks. The one from Colorado Springs. And Dodge. And Santa Fe. And about a dozen other places where men thought they were too important to face consequences. I see. Hale takes a breath, and Lena can practically see him shifting strategies, cycling through options like cards in a deck. Well, Mr. Mercer, I'm afraid someone has misinformed you. Whatever you've heard about me. 3 enforcers disappeared last week, Colt says, his tone conversational, like he's discussing the weather. You've been looking for them, won't find them. They're currently guests of the federal marshal in Alamogordo, signing statements about every illegal act they committed under your orders. Hale's smile finally cracks. That's a serious accusation. Not an accusation. A fact. Your land office records? The ones you've been using to claim legal ownership of properties you extorted? Federal agents have copies now. Turns out when you forge a signature, you're supposed to make sure the person you're forging didn't die 2 years before the document was dated. Lena feels something inside her chest. Something that's been wound tight for so long, she'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe around it. He did it. Colt Mercer actually did it. Everything she'd gathered, every scrap of evidence she'd compiled and smuggled to him, he'd turned it into action. Hale's voice drops the pleasant pretense. You're making a mistake. Made plenty of those, Colt agrees. This isn't one of them. You think you can ride into my town and... Not your town. Colt's interruption is quiet but absolute. Never was. You just convinced people it was while you held a gun to their heads. Difference is, you never held the gun yourself. Had men like Dutch there do it for you. Dutch Carver speaks up for the first time, his voice like gravel in a tin can. You got a lot of mouth for one man facing 5. 5? Colt sounds almost curious. Where's Ramirez, Stockton? That big Swede you had breaking fingers down at the mine? Hale's jaw tightens. What did you do? Me? Nothing. The law did it. Federal warrants. Turns out terrorizing citizens is frowned upon by the government, even out here. Especially when there's documented evidence. Bills of sale signed by dead men. Witness statements. A whole paper trail showing how you turned land grants into a protection racket. Tommy Pike is sweating now, and it's not just the heat. Boss, what's he talking about? Shut up, Tommy, Hale snaps. Should listen to him, kid, Colt says. This doesn't involve you, not yet. You haven't crossed the line he has. Still time to walk away. He's not going anywhere, Hale says. None of them are. Because here's what you don't understand, Mercer. Maybe you've got some papers filed somewhere. Maybe you've got a few of my men singing to federal marshals who are 3 days' ride from here. But right now, right this moment, you're in the middle of my street, surrounded by my guns, in a town that knows what happens to people who cross me. Yeah, Colt says. They get their land back, their dignity back, their future back. They get buried, Hale corrects. And so do you, unless you're smart enough to climb back on that horse and ride out the same way you came in. Colt sits still for 3 seconds. 5. 10. Then he dismounts. It's not theatrical. He just swings down from the saddle like a man planning to stretch his legs. And the gray mare doesn't even need tying. She just stands there, patient as a stone. Colt's boots hit the dirt, and somehow that sound, just boot leather on packed earth, carries like a bell toll. Last chance, Hale says. But there's something in his voice now, something that wasn't there before. The first hairline crack in all that certainty. Yeah, Colt agrees. It is. Up in her window, Lena realizes she's stopped breathing. Her hands ache from gripping the curtain. 6 years of work. 6 years of gathering names, dates, documents, tracking down witnesses who were too terrified to speak until someone promised them protection. 6 years of slowly, methodically building a case that could take down a man who seemed untouchable. It all comes down to this. One man standing in a street, 5 guns facing him. And somewhere beyond the edge of town, federal agents who would arrive in 2 days with warrants and authority and the full weight of law. If Colt Mercer lives that long. Hale nods once, just a slight dip of his chin, and the street explodes. Dutch Carver moves first, not because he's fastest, but because he's angriest. His hand drops toward his gun with the confidence of a man who's pulled iron on 100 terrified shopkeepers and never faced return fire. Colt's already moving. Not fast. That's what Lena will remember later, when she replays this moment in her mind 1,000 times. He doesn't move fast. He moves right. His hand flows to his gun like water finding a crack, smooth and inevitable, and the Colt 45 clears leather before Dutch's fingers even wrap around his grip. The shot is singular, crisp. Dutch staggers, his gun clattering to the dirt, his hand clutching his shoulder. Not dead, deliberately not dead, but removed from the fight as surely as if he'd never entered it. Tommy Pike fires wildly, panic overriding training he probably never had. 3 shots that go wide, one punching through a window shutter, one kicking up dust 5 feet from Colt, one vanishing into the blue. Colt moves lateral, creating angles, and his second shot catches Tommy in the thigh. The kid goes down screaming, and his gun skitters away across the hardpan. 2 down. 3 seconds elapsed. The Rodriguez brothers are professionals. They don't panic. Miguel breaks left while Carlos breaks right, textbook suppressing fire, trying to catch Colt in a crossfire that should be inescapable. Should be. Colt drops. Not diving, not falling. He goes down into a controlled crouch behind a water trough that suddenly becomes the only cover in 50 yards of open street. Miguel's shot hits where Colt's chest was a half second ago. Carlos's shot winds off the trough's iron rim. Lena can't see Colt anymore, just the trough, and the 2 brothers advancing with the careful synchronization of men who've done this before, who know how to pin someone down and finish them. Then Colt rises like something surfacing from deep water. He's somehow 5 feet from where he went down, and he comes up already aimed. 2 shots. Professional. Clean. Miguel takes one in the chest and goes down hard. Carlos catches one in the gut and folds over his own knees. Lena feels sick. She's seen death before, saw her father die when Hale's men beat him in his own fields for refusing to sell, but this is different. This is surgical. This is a man who's calculated exactly how much force to apply to each situation and wastes nothing. Not a bullet, not a movement, not a breath. 5 seconds since the first shot, 4 men down. The street is suddenly impossibly quiet. Somewhere a dog barks. Someone's breathing hard, though Lena can't tell if it's her or someone down below. Gun smoke hangs in the still air like a curtain nobody can quite see through. Victor Hale stands exactly where he was before the shooting started. He's staring at his men, Dutch groaning and clutching his shoulder, Tommy sobbing about his leg, Miguel not moving, Carlos making wet sounds that mean he's not long for this world. The mathematics of power have just been rewritten in front of him, and Lena can see him trying to recalculate, trying to find the angle that gives him control again. "You've just murdered," Hale starts. "Self-defense," Colt interrupts, his gun still out, still aimed at center mass, witnessed by every person hiding behind every window in this town. They drew first. You gave the order. That makes you culpable for assault with deadly intent. You can't prove, don't need to prove what everyone saw, but I can prove what you've done to this town. Already did. Federal agents are en route right now with warrants for your arrest on charges of extortion, fraud, theft, conspiracy, and accomplice to murder. Hale's hand twitches toward his own gun. He wears one, though everyone knows it's for show, a fashion accessory like his expensive watch. "Don't," Colt says. Not a plea, not a warning, just a statement of fact about what will happen if Hale's hand keeps moving. Hale freezes. "You think you've won something here?" Hale's voice is different now, stripped of charm, of calculation, of everything except the naked rage underneath. "You think taking me down changes anything? There'll be another like me. There always is. Men who see opportunity and take it. Men who understand that power belongs to whoever's strong enough to claim it." "Maybe," Colt says, "but you won't be one of them. I have money, lawyers, friends in the territorial government. You think a few federal warrants will stick? I'll be out before the ink dries. Then you'll go back to prison when the next set of charges hit. And the next, and the next. Because every person you've wronged, every family you've destroyed, every deed you've stolen, they're all going to testify. And you're going to spend whatever's left of your life watching your empire dissolve one court case at a time." Something crosses Hale's face. Something that might be the first real fear he's felt in 5 years. "Unless," he says, and his voice takes on that reasonable tone again, "we could discuss an arrangement. I have resources. Enough to make both of us wealthy men. We could—" "No." Just that. Just the single word, flat and final as a coffin lid closing. Hale's face contorts. Pride, rage, fear, they're all fighting for control, and none of them are winning. His hand drops toward his gun. He's not fast. Was never meant to be. Men like Victor Hale pay other people to be fast. Colt's shot takes the gun out of Hale's hand before it clears the holster. Literally takes it, the bullet striking the barrel and sending the weapon spinning 15 feet away. Hale staggers back, clutching his hand. Not shot, just shocked by the impact. And he's staring at Colt like he's seen something impossible. "You're alive," Colt says, "because you're worth more as a witness against everyone you've worked with. Every politician you've bribed, every judge you've bought, every official who looked the other way while you stole this town piece by piece, you're going to give them all up. Every name, every deal, every dirty secret, because that's the only thing that might shave a few years off what you're facing." Hale opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. No words come out. "Federal agents will be here day after tomorrow," Colt continues. "Until then, you're confined to your hotel room under citizen's arrest. Anyone tries to help you run, they become accessories. Anyone tries to break you out, they face the same charges you do. And anyone foolish enough to take a shot at me better make damn sure they don't miss." He holsters his gun, just slides it home like the fight's over because he's decided it is. Hale looks around, at his fallen men, at the empty street, at the windows where faces are starting to appear. People emerging from hiding. Witnesses who've just watched the invincible Victor Hale reduced to a criminal awaiting arrest. "You've destroyed me," Hale says, and he sounds almost confused, like he can't quite process what's happened. "No," Colt says. "She did." He tilts his head toward the hotel, toward the second-floor window where Lena stands. Every eye on the street follows his gesture. Suddenly Lena's visible in a way she hasn't been for 6 years. Not as the crazy widow obsessed with revenge, not as the desperate woman muttering about justice, but as the person who made this happen. She steps back from the window, her heart hammering. This wasn't the plan. She was supposed to stay invisible, stay safe. Let Colt be the face of it while she remained the architect nobody knew about. But Colt just gave her credit in front of the whole town. Made her the hero, or the target, she doesn't know which yet. Down on the street, Colt walks toward his horse. Not running, not watching his back, just walking like he's got all the time in the world, and nobody would be stupid enough to test him. He's right. Doors start opening, slowly at first, then faster. People step into the street, some to help the wounded, some to stare at Hale like they're seeing him for the first time, some just to stand in the sunlight and remember what it feels like not to be afraid. Lena moves toward the stairs without thinking about it. 6 years of planning, and now it's happening too fast, the ending arriving before she's ready. She needs to talk to Colt, needs to coordinate with the federal agents, needs to make sure Hale doesn't somehow slip through the cracks the way powerful men always seem to. She reaches the ground floor and pushes through the hotel's front door into heat that hits like a physical blow. Colt's mounted up again. He's saying something to a man she recognizes, Jacob Winters, who lost his farm to Hale 3 years back and now works for day wages. Winters nods at whatever Colt's telling him, looking dazed but determined. "Mercer," Lena calls out. He turns in the saddle. Up close, she can see details the distance hid, the scar above his left eye, the gray in his stubble, the kind of weariness that comes from carrying weight too long. He's maybe 40, maybe 50. Could be anywhere between, worn down by a life that's been spent moving from one fight to the next. "Miss Voss," he says, and there's recognition in it. They've never met face to face, but he knows who she is. Of course he does. She's the one who sent him everything, who built the case he just executed. "Thank you," she says, and the words feel inadequate, too small for what's just happened. He shakes his head slightly. "You did the work. I just finished it." Still, federal agents will be here in 2 days. Make sure Hale doesn't leave town. Make sure people write down what they saw, what they know. Names, dates, details, everything. The more evidence they have, the harder it is for him to wiggle free. "I will. I've been documenting everything for years. I know you can," Colt interrupts, but it's gentle, not dismissive. That's why it'll stick this time. He starts to turn his horse. "Wait," Lena says. "Where are you going?" He looks west, toward the horizon where the sun will set in a few hours. "Somewhere else." "That's it? You're just leaving? Job's done here. But the trial, the testimony, there'll be questions." "I've written everything down. Winters has my statement. It'll hold up." Lena feels something like panic rising. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. In her imagination, and she's imagined this moment 1,000 times, there would be celebration, recognition, the town coming together to honor the man who freed them. Maybe Colt would stay for a while, help them rebuild, be part of the community he'd saved. Instead, he's leaving like it's just another job, just another town, just another wrong made slightly more right. "You can't just," she starts. "Can," he says. "That's the point." "Why? What's out there that's more important than seeing this through?" He looks at her then, really looks at her, and she sees something in his eyes, something ancient and tired and utterly certain. "Another town like this one," he says. "Another person running out of time. Another situation where waiting means people get hurt. I'm good at one thing, Miss Voss. I find men who thought they were untouchable, and I prove them wrong. That's it. That's all I've got." "That's not nothing," Lena says quietly. "Never said it was. But it's not the kind of thing that builds a life. It's the kind of thing that ends them, mine included, eventually." He touches the brim of his hat, a gesture that might be goodbye or acknowledgement or both. "Your land," he says. "The documents proving your family's original claim, they're in the evidence package headed to the federal agents. You'll get it back, all of it." The words hit her like a physical blow. 6 years she's been fighting for that, for the land Hale stole after her father died, the land that represented everything her family built. And Colt's just telling her she's getting it back like he's mentioning the weather. "How did you made it part of the evidence." "I made sure it got flagged for immediate review. Should be processed within the month." Tears are burning in Lena's eyes, and she hates it, hates showing weakness after staying strong for so long. "I don't know how to thank you." "Already did," Colt says. "Now do what comes next. Help these people rebuild. Make sure the next Victor Hale doesn't find easy ground here. Be the person who turns this town into something worth saving." "What about you?" He smiles, and it's sad and knowing and completely without self-pity. "I'm nobody's tomorrow," he says. "Just there right now when it matters most." Then he turns his horse and rides. Lena watches him go, this man who appeared like an answer to a prayer she'd stopped believing would be heard. He doesn't look back, doesn't wave, just rides west into the heat shimmer until he's indistinct from the desert itself. Around her, Red Hollow begins to stir. People emerging, talking in hushed voices, starting to realize that the weight they've carried for 5 years just lifted. Jacob Winters is already organizing men to watch Hale, to make sure he doesn't slip away. Others are seeing to the wounded, even Dutch Carver, who they hate, because that's what decent people do. Somewhere in the crowd, Lena hears a child laugh. It's been so long since she heard that sound in Red Hollow that it startles her. But there it is again. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, laughing at something her brother said while their mother holds both their hands and cries quiet tears of relief. The town isn't saved. Not yet. There's still the trial, still the work of rebuilding, Still the hard process of learning to trust each other again after years of suspicion and fear. But for the first time in a long time, saving it seems possible. Lena looks west one more time. Colt's already gone, swallowed by the distance and the heat. She doesn't know where he's headed, doesn't know if she'll ever hear about him again. But somewhere out there, another town is probably breaking. Another wrong is probably growing. Another person is probably running out of time. And a man who doesn't belong anywhere except the moment when everything changes is riding toward them. That's who Colt Mercer is. That's who he'll always be. The man who arrives after hope dies. The man who leaves before the celebration starts. The man who finishes fights he didn't start so other people can build futures he'll never see. And by the time anyone thinks to look for him, he's already somewhere else, making someone else's impossible possible, turning someone else's tomorrow into something they can actually live to see. Behind Lena, Red Hollow breathes. It's not freedom yet, but it's close enough to taste. The first thing Lena does after Colt disappears into the western haze is walk straight to the bank. Not Hale's bank anymore, just a building with papers inside that might finally mean something again. The door's unlocked because nobody's thought to secure it yet, and she pushes through into the dim interior where dust motes float in the single shaft of sunlight coming through the window. Jacob Winters is already there, standing over Hale's desk with a ledger open in front of him. He looks up when Lena enters, and she sees something in his face she hasn't seen in years. Purpose. Not hope exactly, but its cousin. The thing that gets you out of bed when hopes run dry. You know how to read legal documents? He asks without preamble. Better than most lawyers, Lena says. It's not a brag. She spent 6 years learning the language of contracts and deeds and territorial law because that was the only way to fight Hale. You can't beat a man who weaponizes paperwork unless you speak his language. Jacob pushes the ledger toward her. Then maybe you can make sense of this. Because near as I can tell, Hale's been running 3 different sets of books. One for the tax assessor, one for his investors, and one that might actually be real. Lena moves to the desk, her eyes scanning the columns of numbers and dates. Jacob's right. There are discrepancies everywhere. Amounts that don't match between entries. Properties listed as sold that she knows are still occupied. Payments recorded for services that were never rendered. It's a shell game, she says quietly. He's been moving money between accounts to make it look like he's operating at a loss while actually pulling profit. Keeps his tax burden low and makes him look like he's barely scraping by when he's actually rich as sin, Jacob finishes. Yeah, I'm seeing that. Question is, what do we do about it? Before Lena can answer, the door bangs open and 3 more people crowd in. Sarah Chen, who runs the general store that's barely staying afloat. Marcus Webb, the blacksmith who lost his shop to Hale 2 years back and now works out of a lean-to. And old Thomas Byrne, who used to be the mayor before Hale made the position irrelevant. Is it true? Sarah asks, her voice tight. Is he really done? Federal agents are coming, Lena says, day after tomorrow, with warrants. But until then? Marcus's hands are clenched into fists. Until then, he's still here, still walking around, still able to... He's confined to his hotel room, Jacob interrupts. Mercer's orders. Anyone helps him leave, they're accomplices. Mercer's gone, Thomas points out. His voice carries the dry rasp of someone who's seen too many promises break. What's to stop Hale from just riding out? He's got money, contacts. Could be in Mexico before those federal boys show up. We stop him, Lena says. The certainty in her voice surprises even her. For 6 years she's operated in shadows, gathering evidence, building cases, working through intermediaries because direct confrontation would have gotten her killed. But something's shifted. Maybe it's watching Colt face down 5 men without flinching. Maybe it's the look on Hale's face when he realized his empire was crumbling. Maybe it's just that she's tired of being afraid. How? Sarah asks. We're not gunfighters, and Hale still has people loyal to him, or at least people who owe him money and think that's the same thing. We document everything, Lena says, tapping the ledger. Every transaction, every forged signature, every piece of property he stole. We make copies. We get witness statements from everyone who's been wronged. We build such an airtight case that even the best lawyer in the territory can't poke holes in it. That'll take days, Marcus says. Weeks, maybe. Then we'd better start now. They work through the afternoon, and more people drift in as word spreads. Not everyone. There are still those who fear Hale too much to act, or who've profited from his corruption and have their own reasons to want it buried. But enough come. Enough to matter. Mary Stockton brings the deed to her family's ranch, the one Hale claimed after her husband died in a mining accident that wasn't quite an accident. Robert Hayes carries in a stack of I owe us Hale, used to force him into signing over his water rights. The Kowalski brothers show up with a contract so dense with legal language that it took them 3 years to realize they'd signed away their mineral claims for a fraction of what they were worth. Each person who enters carries a piece of Hale's empire, and as Lena helps them organize the documents into chronological order, she starts to see the full scope of what he built. It's not just theft, it's systematic dismantling of an entire community, piece by piece, family by family, dream by dream. By the time the sun starts to drop toward the horizon, the bank's main room looks like a legal office exploded. Papers cover every surface. 3 separate groups are working on witness statements, trying to get the details down while they're fresh. Someone's found Hale's safe behind a painting in his office upstairs, and Jacob's working on the combination while Marcus stands ready with a crowbar, in case they need to do it the hard way. Lena's wrist aches from writing. Her eyes burn from reading faded ink on documents that smell like mold and broken promises. But she doesn't stop. Can't stop. Because this is the moment, the brief window between Hale's fall and his potential escape, when everything can still tip either way. "Got it," Jacob calls from upstairs. The sound of a safe door swinging open follows, and then silence. Lena climbs the stairs, her legs protesting. She hasn't slept properly in 3 days, and the adrenaline that carried her through the gunfight is wearing thin. Jacob's standing in front of the open safe, but he's not moving, just staring at what's inside. Lena steps up beside him and understands why. Cash. Stacks of it, more than she's ever seen in one place. But that's not what's frozen Jacob, it's the other items. A collection of watches, personal items Hale must have taken as collateral or trophies. A stack of photographs, some of them showing Hale with territorial officials, others showing what looks like surveying crews marking out properties. And a leather journal, the kind someone uses for private notes they never intend to share. Jacob reaches for this journal with shaking hands, opens it, starts reading. His face goes pale. "What?" Lena asks. "It's a list," Jacob says quietly. "Everyone he bribed, every official he bought, every marshal who looked the other way. Names, dates, amounts paid." He flips through more pages. And there's more. Plans for expansion, properties he was targeting next, tactics for forcing people out if they wouldn't sell. There's a whole section on... He stops, his jaw tightening, on how to make accidents look natural. Lena takes the journal from him. The handwriting is neat, precise, the kind of penmanship they teach in Eastern schools. But the content is poison. She recognizes some of the names, Judge Carson, who ruled in Hale's favor on every disputed claim. Sheriff Tate from the next county over, who never investigated complaints against Hale's enforcers. 3 different land office clerks who expedited Hale's filings while delaying everyone else's. And then she sees her own name, Lena Voss, persistent problem. Father died before could be bought off. Daughter showed initial promise of breaking, but has proven resilient. Recommend isolation and economic pressure. If those fail, accident while traveling. Make it look like bandits. The words blur. Lena's hand shakes so badly she nearly drops the journal. Hale had planned to kill her. Not in the heat of anger, not as a last resort. It was right there in his notes, filed between purchase additional water rights and recruit new enforcers for expansion phase. Her death was a line item in his business plan. "You okay?" Jacob's voice sounds distant. Lena forces herself to breathe. Once, twice. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. None of us are. But we're here, and he's not." Jacob takes the journal back gently. "This is everything Mercer said we'd need. Evidence, documentation, proof of intent. Federal agents see this. Hale won't just face property fraud. He'll face conspiracy to commit murder." Downstairs, someone shouts. Not in fear, in discovery. Lena and Jacob exchange glances and head back down to find Sarah Chen standing in the middle of the room, holding up a document like it's a winning lottery ticket. "The original town charter," Sarah says, her voice shaking with excitement. "The real one, not the version Hale's been showing people. This one establishes Red Hollow as a municipal corporation with elected governance and communal water rights. Everything Hale's done, every land grab, every forced sale, It's all invalid because he never had legal authority to control municipal resources in the first place. Thomas Byrne takes the document with the care of someone handling ancient scripture. His eyes move across the text, and with each line his posture straightens until he's standing like he did 15 years ago when he actually was mayor. He knew, Thomas says. Hale knew this existed. That's why he pushed so hard to get me out of office. As long as I was mayor, there was a chance someone would remember we had actual legal rights. Once I was gone, he could operate like Red Hollow was just unincorporated territory. Can we use this? Marcus asks. Use it? Thomas looks up, and there's something fierce in his expression. We can do more than use it. We can invoke it, reestablish municipal governance, elect a proper council, take back control of town resources. Hale's been treating this place like his personal kingdom, but legally speaking, we've always had the right to self-govern. We just forgot. The room goes quiet. Not the terrified silence that's hung over Red Hollow for 5 years, but the thoughtful quiet of people realizing they have power they didn't know about. Then we need to move fast, Lena says, before Hale figures out what we're doing, before any of his remaining people get organized enough to interfere. We call an emergency town meeting tonight. We elect a council. We formally place Hale under citizen's arrest as acting municipal authority. We secure all his properties and records as evidence in an ongoing federal investigation. That's a lot of legal maneuvering for folks who aren't lawyers, Sarah points out. Hale's not a lawyer either, Lena counters. He's just a man who learned to use legal language as a weapon. We can do the same. Over the next 2 hours, they spread the word. It's not a formal announcement. Those could be intercepted, blocked by people still loyal to Hale. Instead, it's whispered conversations, quick visits, hand-delivered notes to the people who've suffered most under Hale's rule. By sunset, more than 60 people have gathered in the church. It's the only building in town large enough to hold that many, and there's a certain poetry to it, taking sanctuary in a place Hale never bothered to control because he didn't think faith mattered compared to deeds and contracts. The church hasn't been properly used in 3 years. The pews are dusty. The hymnal's water-damaged from a roof leak nobody had money to fix. That cracked bell in the tower casts a shadow across the altar. But people fill the space anyway, standing in the aisles when the seats run out, and the murmur of their voices sounds like hope trying to remember how to speak. Thomas Byrne stands at the front. He's cleaned up since this afternoon, found his old mayoral coat even though it hangs loose on a frame that's gotten thinner. When he speaks, his voice carries. I'm not going to pretend this is a normal town meeting, he starts. Nothing about today has been normal. Some of you saw what happened in the street. All of you have heard about it by now. Victor Hale's reign here is ending. Question is, what comes next? Justice, someone calls from the back. Lena recognizes the voice, Michael Torres, who lost his freight business when Hale undercut his prices and then bought the contracts. Yes, Thomas agrees. Justice. But also governance. Because here's what most of us forgot. Red Hollow was never Hale's to run. We have a town charter, legal standing, the right to elect our own officials and control our own resources. We gave that up without a fight because we thought we had no choice. Today, we learn different. He holds up the charter Sarah found. This document says we're a municipality. That means we govern ourselves. So here's what I'm proposing. We hold an emergency election right here, right now. We establish a town council with authority to act on behalf of Red Hollow's citizens. And we use that authority to do what needs doing until the federal agents arrive. What needs doing is putting Hale in the ground, someone mutters. Lena thinks it might be Jeremiah Cole, whose son died in the mines under suspicious circumstances. What needs doing, Thomas says firmly, is making sure the law works. Mercer gave us a chance. He took down Hale's muscle, exposed his crimes, set up federal intervention. But if we turn into a lynch mob, we give Hale's lawyers ammunition. They'll argue he was never safe here, never got due process, that everything done against him was mob justice without legal standing. We do this right, or we risk losing it all. The crowd shifts, uncomfortable. Lena understands the feeling. After years of suffering, the urge to strike back is powerful. But Thomas is right. Hale's kind of evil hides behind legal procedures. The only way to beat it is to use those same procedures better than he did. I nominate Thomas Byrne for mayor, Jacob Winters calls out. Seconded, Sarah Chen adds immediately. Any other nominations? Thomas asks. He waits, but nobody speaks. All in favor? The response is unanimous. Hands, voices, nods. a wave of agreement that makes the church feel less empty. Thomas takes a breath. Then, as acting mayor under the authority of the Red Hollow Municipal Charter, my first act is to establish a town council. I'll need 5 people. Volunteers? Hands go up. More than 5. Thomas picks carefully. Jacob Winters for his steady temperament, Sarah Chen because she's kept her business alive through sheer stubborn competence, Marcus Webb for his connections to the working folks, Mary Stockton to represent the ranching families, and Lena Voss. Lena wasn't expecting that last one. Thomas, I'm not... You're the one who made this happen, Thomas interrupts. You spent 6 years building the case against Hale. Without you, we'd still be under his boot. You've earned a seat at this table. The affirmation from the crowd is immediate. Applause, actual applause. And Lena feels something crack inside her chest. The armor she's worn for so long. The isolation she maintained to stay safe. These people see her now. Not as the crazy widow, as the woman who saved their town. It's terrifying. The council convenes right there in the church. First order of business, formally place Victor Hale under house arrest pending federal charges. Marcus volunteers to lead a rotation of guards. Not to hurt Hale, just to make sure he doesn't leave. 12 men sign up immediately. Second order, secure all of Hale's properties and business records as evidence. Sarah knows where every one of his holdings is located, and she rattles off addresses while Jacob writes them down. They'll need to post notices, prevent anyone from removing documents or assets. Third order, establish a fund to help those most damaged by Hale's actions. The money from his safe, more than $12,000, will be held in trust for restitution once the federal agents determine proper distribution. It's past midnight when the meeting finally breaks up. Lena's exhausted beyond measure, but there's work still to do. The witness statements need to be compiled, the evidence organized, everything prepared for when the federal agents arrive. She walks back to the hotel through streets that feel different now. Same buildings, same dust, same heat lingering from the day. But the weight is different. Lighter, maybe, or just distributed across more shoulders so no one person has to carry it alone. Her room is on the 3rd floor, and by the time she climbs the stairs, her legs are shaking. She unlocks the door, steps into darkness, lights the lamp, and freezes. Someone's sitting in the chair by the window. Her hand goes to the knife she keeps in her pocket, but before she can draw it, the figure speaks. Easy, Miss Voss. Just me. Colt Mercer. Lena's heart hammers against her ribs. You left. I saw you ride out. Came back. He stands, and in the lamplight she can see he's dusty from travel. Needed to make sure you understood something. What? The next 48 hours are the most dangerous you'll face. Hale's smart enough to know he's finished here, but that doesn't mean he's given up. Desperate men make desperate choices. We've got guards on him, Lena says, trying to steady her voice. 12 men rotating shifts. He's not going anywhere. Guards can be bribed or killed. Colt moves to the window, looking out at the darkened street. Hale's got money hidden that you haven't found yet. Always does. And he's got connections you don't know about. People who owe him favors or who've profited from his operations. Some of them will cut him loose to save themselves. Others might try to break him out. Then what do you suggest? I'll stay until the federal agents arrive. Watch the approaches. Make sure nobody tries anything stupid. Lena sinks onto the edge of her bed, the relief so powerful it makes her dizzy. I thought you had somewhere else to be. I do, but it can wait 2 days. He turns from the window. You did good today. Organizing the council, securing the evidence, keeping people focused on doing this right instead of doing it fast. That's harder than most people think. Learned from you, Lena says. No? You already knew it. You just needed someone to clear the path so you could use what you know. He pauses. There's something else you should understand. When those federal agents get here, they're going to ask you to testify. Not just about the documents, about everything. What you experienced, what you witnessed, what Hale did to this town. It's going to mean going through it all again. Every loss, every humiliation, every moment you thought you couldn't survive. You prepared for that? Lena thinks about her father, beaten in his own fields. About the years spent gathering evidence in secret, terrified every moment that she'd be discovered. About the night she almost gave up, almost decided that fighting was pointless, and maybe she should just sell the land and leave. I'm prepared, she says. Good. Colt moves toward the door. Get some sleep. I'll be watching the street. Wait. Lena stands. Why are you really doing this? And don't tell me it's just about finishing the job. You finished it this afternoon. He stops, his hand on the doorknob. For a long moment, he doesn't answer, and Lena thinks he's going to leave without explaining. Then he speaks, his voice so quiet she has to strain to hear it. Had a sister once, Clara. Smart girl, big dreams. She married a man who seemed decent, moved to a mining town in Colorado. Year later, I got a letter saying she'd died. Accident, they said. Fell down the stairs. He's still facing the door, not looking at Lena. I rode out there to settle her affairs. Found out the truth. She'd been trying to stop the mine owner from cheating the workers. Had evidence, was going to take it to the territorial governor. Night before she was set to leave, she fell. Witnesses said it was dark. She missed a step. But I talked to people who were afraid to speak up officially. She didn't fall. She was pushed. Lena's throat tightens. Did you find who did it? Yeah, mine owner and 2 of his foremen. They were untouchable. Connections in Denver, judges in their pocket, marshals who looked the other way. Legal system couldn't touch them. What did you do? What I had to. Colt finally turns and his face is carved from stone. They're not untouchable anymore. None of them are. And I've spent the last 12 years making sure men like that understand something. It doesn't matter how much power you think you have, how many people you've bought, how safe you feel. Someone's always paying attention. Someone's always building a case. And eventually, someone like me shows up to collect. He opens the door. Your sister would be proud, Lena says. Colt pauses. She'd probably tell me I'm wasting my life chasing ghosts. She was practical that way, but I like to think she'd understand. He steps into the hallway. Lock this door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Jacob. Someone knocks claiming emergency. You verify through the door before you open it. Then he's gone. And Lena's alone with the lamp and the shadows and the understanding that Colt Mercer isn't a mystery solving itself. He's a man carrying the same grief she's carried, just pointed in a different direction. She locks the door, checks the window latch, lies down on the bed fully clothed with her knife under the pillow. Sleep doesn't come easy, but it comes. She dreams of her father. Not the beating, not the funeral. Instead, she dreams of him teaching her to read contracts when she was 12, showing her how to spot the clauses that seemed helpful but actually gave all the power to the other party. Never sign anything you don't understand, he'd said, and never trust anyone who gets angry when you ask questions. She'd forgotten that lesson for a while, let herself trust that the law would work, that justice would arrive on its own. It took 6 years of hard education to remember what her father taught her. Justice is built, piece by piece, by people who refuse to accept that power makes right. She wakes before dawn to the sound of horses. For a panicked moment, she thinks it's hail escaping, but when she rushes to the window, she sees it's Colt, mounted up, talking to 3 riders who've just arrived in town. She can't hear the conversation, but she can read body language. The riders are tense. One keeps glancing toward the hotel where Hale is being held. Another has his hand near his gun. These aren't federal agents. These are Hale's people, coming to either extract him or finish the job he started. Colt sits easy in his saddle, but his coat is pushed back. Access to his gun clear. The conversation continues for 2 minutes. 3. The lead rider says something that makes Colt shake his head. The rider's hand moves toward his weapon. Lena holds her breath. Then Colt says something. She can see his lips move, can see the deliberate calm of his posture. The lead rider stiffens. His hand moves away from his gun. After another minute of conversation, all 3 riders turn and head back out of town the way they came. Colt watches them go until they're out of sight, then dismounts and ties his horse outside the church where the town council held their meeting. Lena dresses quickly and heads downstairs. The street is starting to wake up, people emerging for water, for work, for the simple act of starting another day. But there's a difference this morning. They're not hunched against invisible blows. They're standing straight. She finds Colt inside the church, sitting in a back pew. He's not praying. Doesn't look like a man who believes in that. He's just sitting, watching the colored light come through the dusty windows. Who were they? Lena asks. Enforcers from Hale's operation in Alamogordo came to see if the rumors were true. And? I convinced them that coming after Hale would be bad for their continued health. Also mentioned that the federal investigation is wide enough to include anyone who helps him now. They decided their loyalty had limits. Lena sits in the pew in front of him, turning so she can see his face. Will there be more? Probably. Hale's been operating for years. He's got connections we don't know about, people who've profited from his setup. Some of them will want him silenced before he talks. Others will want to break him out so he can rebuild somewhere else. But they'll be careful now. Word's spreading that Red Hollow's not easy pickings anymore. Because of you. Because of all of you. I just made sure people understand the cost of testing that. Footsteps echo through the church. Jacob Winters enters, looking like he hasn't slept. Morning. We've got a problem. Lena's stomach drops. What kind? 3 families left town overnight, packed up quiet and just went, talked to their neighbors. They said Hale got messages to them somehow. Threatened their kids if they testified. Colt stands. Show me who's still here and who's gone. They walk through town, and Jacob points out the empty houses. The Mitchells, who had evidence of Hale forcing their sale through intimidation. The Chens, Sarah's cousins, not her immediate family, who witnessed one of Hale's enforcers beating a man who couldn't pay. The Rodriguezes, whose daughter had been harassed by Tommy Pike until she was too scared to leave her house. That's strategic, Colt says. He's eliminating witnesses who could testify to violent crimes. Property fraud is one thing. Assault, intimidation, threats against children, that's federal charges that stick harder. How's he getting messages out, Lena asks. We've got guards on him. Guards need to sleep, need to eat, need to use the privy. Takes 5 seconds to slip a note under a door, 10 seconds for someone to run it to a contact. Colt's jaw tightens. We need to isolate him completely. No visitors, no exceptions. Food gets checked before it goes in. Guards work in pairs so nobody's alone with him. That'll work for today, Jacob says. But we've got another full day before the federal agents arrive. Can we really keep him locked down that long? We have to. Lena's surprised by the steel in her own voice. Because if we don't, he wins. Maybe not completely, maybe not forever, but he wins enough. He gets to take people with him, gets to damage the case, gets to keep that little piece of control that lets him feel like he's still the most powerful person in the room. Colt looks at her with something that might be approval. You're learning. They spend the morning tightening security. Marcus Webb takes personal charge of the guard rotation, and he doesn't pick the biggest men or the angriest. He picks the ones who've proven they can follow orders, who understand the difference between justice and revenge. The guards are instructed to work in 3-person shifts. One watches the door, one patrols the hallway, one stays mobile checking the perimeter. No food or water goes to Hale unless 2 people have inspected it. No conversation beyond the minimum necessary for health and safety. Hale tests the new restrictions within an hour. I need to speak with my lawyer, he calls through the door. It's my legal right. Your lawyer's been notified of the federal charges, Marcus responds. He can see you after you're formally in custody. This is illegal detention. You have no authority. Town charter says different. You're under citizen's arrest by municipal authority pending transfer to federal custody. Your lawyer can file a complaint with the territorial court if he thinks we're overstepping. Silence. Then, I need medical attention. My hand is injured from when Mercer shot my gun. Marcus looks at the other guards. One of them is Robert Hayes, who used to work as a medic during the war. Check it, Marcus says. Robert enters with Marcus watching from the doorway. Hale's sitting on the bed, cradling his right hand. There's bruising, but no blood, no obvious break. Robert examines it carefully, moving the fingers, checking range of motion. Bruised but functional, Robert reports. Nothing that requires a doctor. I'm the one who decides if I need medical care, Hale snaps. No, Marcus says from the doorway. You're in custody. We decide if you need care, and we provide it if you do. You don't like it, you can file that complaint alongside the one from your lawyer. Hale's face flushes red. You're making a mistake, all of you. When I get out of this, and I will get out of this, I'll make sure every person involved pays. Your families, your property, your futures, I'll take it all. You already tried that, Marcus says. Didn't work out the way you planned. They close the door, lock it. Marcus leans against the wall and lets out a breath. Never thought I'd be the one keeping a man locked up. Always figured if it came to this, we'd just string him up and be done with it. Mercer was right, Robert says. We do it legal, or we give him ammunition. This way he can rage all he wants, doesn't change what's coming. The day crawls forward. Lena works with the council to organize final documentation. Every deed, every contract, every witness statement gets copied in triplicate. One set for the federal agents, one set for territorial court, one set kept in Red Hollow's own records. They learned the hard way that single copies disappear too easily. By afternoon, riders appear on the Eastern Road. Not the federal agents, they're not due until tomorrow. These are different. 4 men, well-armed, riding horses that look fresh. Colt spots them first. He's been on the church roof, the highest point in town with the clearest sight lines. He climbs down and finds Lena outside the land office. We've got incoming, professional types. Could be bounty hunters, could be mercenaries. Either way, they're not here by accident. What do we do? Same thing I did this morning. Talk to them, make them understand the situation. If talk doesn't work, he doesn't finish the sentence. Doesn't need to. The riders enter town slowly, taking in the guards posted near the hotel, the people moving with purpose instead of fear. They stop in the center of the street, and the lead rider, a man with a scar running from his temple to his jaw, calls out, "Looking for Victor Hale. Heard he might need assistance." Colt steps into the street. He's alone, hands empty, but positioned where he can draw if needed. "Hale's in custody. Federal warrants. You're welcome to speak with the territorial marshal about visiting rights once he's transferred." "See, that's the problem," Scarface says. "We have a contract, payment rendered, services to be delivered. Contract says we extract Mr. Hale from situations exactly like this one." "Then you didn't read the fine print. Extracting a federal prisoner is a crime. You proceed, you're all facing charges." One of the other riders laughs. "You planning to stop us? 1 man against 4? "Don't need to stop you," Colt says. "Just need to slow you down long enough for the 30 armed citizens currently watching this conversation to take action. You want to test whether you can fight through them to get to Hale? Go ahead. But you'll be doing it for free, because Hale can't pay you from a federal prison cell." Scarface studies the buildings around them. Lena follows his gaze and realizes Colt's not bluffing. There are people in windows, on rooftops, behind water troughs. Some have rifles. Some have shotguns. Some probably just have hunting weapons they haven't fired in years. But they're there, and they're visible, and the message is clear. "This town's under protection," Colt continues. "Not mine, theirs. I'm just the one explaining how it works. You ride in shooting, you don't ride out. Maybe you take some of them with you. Maybe you even get to Hale. But you'll die doing it. And for what? Money a man can't pay you?" Scarface looks at his companions. Some kind of silent communication passes between them. Then he turns back to Colt. "What about partial payment? For the inconvenience of riding all the way out here. You want payment, take it up with whoever hired you. Town of Red Hollow doesn't owe you anything. The principle is you took a contract from a criminal who's facing federal charges. That's bad judgment. Lesson learned. Move on." For a moment it could go either way. Then Scarface shrugs. "Your funeral when Hale walks on technicalities and remembers who helped keep him locked up. If that happens," Colt says, "I'll deal with it. Until then, you're wasting daylight." The riders turn and leave. Not hurried, not scared, just business-like recognition that this job isn't worth dying over. Lena watches them disappear into the distance and realizes she's been holding her breath. "How many more?" she asks Colt. "Hard to say. Depends on how deep Hale's connections run. But they'll be more cautious now. Word spreads, town that fought back once will fight back again." That evening, the council meets again, this time in the bank instead of the church. They're building redundancy into everything now. Multiple meeting places, multiple copies of documents, multiple people who know the full story in case something happens to one of them. Thomas Byrne looks exhausted but determined. Federal agents arrive tomorrow afternoon if they're on schedule. Until then, we maintain current security. No exceptions, no visitors, no loosening of restrictions on Hale. "What about after they arrive?" Sarah asks. "What's our role then?" "We provide evidence, testimony, and full cooperation," Thomas says. "This becomes their investigation, but we make sure they have everything they need to build an airtight case. Lena, you'll be the primary liaison since you've been coordinating evidence collection." Lena nods, though the responsibility sits heavy. "What about the families who left? The witnesses we lost?" "We document that too," Thomas says. "Witness intimidation is a federal crime. The fact that Hale was able to threaten people while in custody proves he still had active connections and resources. That strengthens the case that he's a flight risk and a danger to the community." They work through the evening, refining their strategy, anticipating questions the federal agents will ask. By the time they break up, it's past midnight again, and Lena is so tired she can barely see straight. She heads back to the hotel, but sleep is elusive. Every sound in the hallway makes her jump. Every creak of the building settling feels like a threat. She spent 6 years working toward this moment, but now that it's here, all she can think about is what could still go wrong. The federal agents could be delayed. Hale could still find a way to escape. The evidence could be challenged in court. A sympathetic judge could rule in Hale's favor on technicalities. There are 1,000 ways this could fail, and Lena's mind cycles through every one of them. Just before dawn, she gives up on sleep and dresses. The street below is quiet except for the guards changing shifts. She's about to turn from the window when movement catches her eye. Someone's approaching the hotel. Not walking, running. It's one of the younger guards, Billy Martinez. He's sprinting like something's chasing him, and even from 3 stories up, Lena can see the panic in his movements. She grabs her knife and rushes downstairs. By the time she reaches the street, Billy's surrounded by guards, and he's gasping for breath, trying to talk and breathe at the same time. Riders, he finally gets out. Eastern Road. Lots of them. 20, maybe more. Armed, coming fast. Colt appears from the direction of the church. How far? 20 minutes? Maybe less. Federal agents? Don't think so. Wrong direction, and they're moving too aggressive. These are fighters. Colt's face goes hard. Hale called in reinforcements. Bigger group, better organized. They're planning a breakout. Can we stop them? Marcus asks. Depends on how committed they are. If they're willing to die for Hale, no. If they're mercenaries working for pay, maybe. Colt turns to Marcus. Get everyone who can handle a weapon to defensive positions. Don't shoot first, but be ready to return fire. Prioritize protecting the hotel where Hale's held. What about evacuation? Sarah asks. Get the families with children out of the line of fire? No time. Tell people to shelter in place. Stay away from windows. If shooting starts, hit the floor and stay down. The town mobilizes with surprising efficiency. Maybe it's all those years of being afraid. Now that they have a target for that fear, they know what to do with it. Within minutes, armed citizens are positioned at key points. It's not a professional defense, but it's determined. Lena takes a position on the hotel's second floor, her father's old rifle in her hands. She hasn't fired it in years, isn't even sure she could hit anything at distance. But having it feels better than being unarmed. The riders appear as a dark mass on the horizon, growing larger as they approach. Billy was right. There are at least 20 of them, maybe 25. They slow as they reach the edge of town, seeing the armed positions, recognizing this won't be the easy extraction they were probably promised. Colt stands in the middle of the street again, alone again. Lena wants to scream at him to take cover, but she understands why he doesn't. This is about message as much as firepower. One man standing his ground says something that a line of nervous townspeople doesn't. The riders stop 50 yards out. Their leader, a different man than this morning's mercenaries, bigger, meaner looking, calls out, "We're here for Victor Hale. Hand him over. Nobody gets hurt." "Can't do that," Colt responds. "He's in federal custody. You want him, you'll need to go through proper channels." "Federal custody?" The leader laughs. "I don't see any federal agents, just townspeople playing at law. This is your last chance. Bring out Hale, or we come in and get him." "You come in," Colt says, "and a lot of people die, yours included. Is Hale worth that? Whatever he's paying you, is it enough to buy your life?" "He's not paying us." The leader's smile is ugly. "We're investors. Hale goes down, we lose properties, contracts, leverage in 3 territories. This is about protecting our interests." That changes the equation. These aren't hired guns who'll leave when the job gets too dangerous. These are men with skin in the game who'll fight because their own fortunes depend on it. "Then you've already lost," Colt says. "The evidence is compiled. The federal agents are en route. Even if you break Hale out, even if you kill everyone in this town, it won't stop what's coming. The case is bigger than Red Hollow now. It's in federal hands." "We'll take our chances." The leader raises his hand. His riders spread out, forming a line. They're preparing to charge. Lena's finger finds the trigger. Around her, she hears hammers being cocked, barrels being steadied on windowsills. The whole town is holding its breath. Then a sound cuts through the tension, a train whistle. Everyone freezes. Red Hollow doesn't have a train station. The railroad chose a different route years ago. There's no reason for a train whistle to sound anywhere near here. But there it is again, closer now. And then Lena sees it. Not a train, but a cloud of dust on the southern road. Riders approaching fast. A lot of them. More than 20. The leader of Hale's investors sees it too. His hand drops slightly. The new riders crest the rise, and Lena's heart nearly stops. Federal agents. Has to be. They're wearing badges that catch the early light, riding in formation, and leading them is a man in a marshal's uniform that marks him as senior authority. They ride straight into town, positioning themselves between the investors and the street where Colt stands. The marshal, a grizzled man in his 50s with eyes that have seen everything, addresses the investors without dismounting. "Gentlemen, I'm Marshal Wade Garrison, operating under federal authority. I believe you're attempting to interfere with a federal investigation. That's a crime. I suggest you reconsider." The leader of the investors calculates odds. 25 of his people against 20 federal agents plus whatever resistance the town puts up. And if they win, they're shooting federal marshals, which is a death sentence no matter how good their lawyers are. "This is a misunderstanding," the leader says, his tone shifting to reasonable. "We had heard reports of illegal detention, came to ensure proper procedures were being followed. Save it for your lawyer," Garrison interrupts. "I've got warrants for Victor Hale's arrest on federal charges. I've also got documentation of witness intimidation and attempted obstruction of justice. You ride off now. I'll note that you showed wisdom and withdrew. You stay, you get arrested alongside Hale for conspiracy. Your choice." The investors withdraw. Not fleeing, but definitely leaving with purpose. Within 2 minutes, the road is empty except for dust settling. Marshal Garrison finally dismounts. He's tall, built like someone who spent 40 years in the saddle, and when he looks at Colt, there's recognition in his eyes. "Mercer, should have known you were involved when I got that evidence package." "Marshal," Colt acknowledges, "you want to tell me why half of what I received was documented by someone named Lena Voss, but you're the one standing in the street?" "Because she did the hard part. I just provided the punctuation." Garrison looks around at the armed townspeople, the defensive positions, the determined faces. "Looks like more than punctuation. Looks like you started a small war." "Prevent one, actually. Hale's upstairs in the hotel, under guard. You'll find him cooperative or combative, depending on whether he's accepted reality yet." "Evidence?" "Organized and ready for review. Miss Voss can walk you through it." Garrison's eyes find Lena in the window. He tips his hat. "Ma'am, I'll need to speak with you shortly, but first let's secure the prisoner." What happens next is almost anticlimactic. Federal agents take custody of Hale with professional efficiency. He's cuffed, read the charges, informed of his rights. He doesn't rage or threaten, just goes quiet, and somehow that's more unsettling than anger would be. As they lead him out of the hotel, he passes close enough to Lena that she can hear him speak. "This isn't over," he says quietly. "You think you've won, but you've just made yourself a target. Every person who lost money because of this will know your name, every judge I've paid, every official I've bought. They'll come for you." "Let them," Lena says, and she's surprised by how steady her voice is. "I've got evidence on most of them, too." Hale's face goes pale. He's finally understanding the scope of what she built. Not just a case against him, but documentation of his entire network. The federal agents load him into a secure wagon. Marshal Garrison stays behind to take statements and collect evidence. The process takes the rest of the day. Lena walks him through everything: the timeline of Hale's crimes, the documentation of each fraudulent deed, the witness accounts of intimidation and violence. Garrison's expression never changes, but she can see him making notes, marking key pieces of evidence, building the mental structure of the prosecution. "This is good work," he finally says. "Thorough. Professional. You have legal training?" "No. Just 6 years of learning by doing." "Well, you did it right. This case is airtight. Hale's going to prison, probably for the rest of his life. And thanks to your documentation of his network, we'll be rolling up his associates for months." He pauses. "You should know, though, he's right about one thing. Some of those associates will be angry. You might want to consider relocation, fresh start somewhere else." Lena looks out the window at Red Hollow, the street where her father died, the land her family built. The town that forgot how to fight back until today reminded them. No, she says. I'm staying. This is my home. I'm not letting anyone take that from me again. Garrison nods like he expected that answer. Then I'll make sure the territorial office knows to keep an eye on things here. Check in periodically, and I'll recommend federal prosecution for anyone who tries to retaliate against witnesses. It won't make you safe, but it might make people think twice. That evening, as the federal agents prepare to transport Hale to Alamogordo for trial, the town gathers again. Not in the church this time, but in the street. Spontaneous and unplanned, people just start emerging as the sun sets, drawn by something none of them can quite name. It's not celebration. Too much has been lost for that. Too many years stolen. Too many lives broken. But it's something. Acknowledgement, maybe. Witness to the fact that they're still here, still standing, still capable of fighting back. Thomas Byrne speaks, though nobody asked him to. We've got a lot of work ahead, rebuilding what was destroyed, helping families who lost everything, figuring out how to govern ourselves now that we remember we can. It won't be easy, might not even be possible, but at least now it's our choice to make. People nod, some cry. A few even laugh, though it sounds rusty from disuse. Lena finds Colt on the edge of the crowd. He's standing apart, watching but not participating. Still the outsider, still ready to leave. You're going, she says. Not a question. Yeah, Garrison's got it from here. You don't need me anymore. I never needed you. I needed what you represent, proof that standing up to people like Hale is possible. You proved that yourself. You just needed someone to take the first shot so everyone else would know it was okay to shoot back. They stand in silence for a moment, watching the crowd. Lena thinks about asking him to stay, but she knows what the answer will be. Men like Colt Mercer don't plant roots. They just pass through, leaving changed circumstances in their wake. Where will you go? She asks instead. South, probably. Been hearing things about a situation in the Pecos Valley. Rancher forcing out homesteaders using tactics that sound familiar. Might be nothing, might be something worth looking into. And after that, there'll be something else. Always is. He turns to face her. You going to be all right? Really all right, not just surviving? I don't know, Lena admits. Ask me in a year, ask me in 5. Right now I'm just trying to remember how to breathe without counting the cost. That's enough, Colt says. You did good, Miss Voss. Better than good. You saved this town. Don't forget that when things get hard again. He walks to his horse, mounts up. The crowd notices, and conversation falters. People turn to watch him, this stranger who changed everything. Colt doesn't make a speech, doesn't wave or acknowledge the attention. He just turns his horse west, always west, and rides. Lena watches until he's gone, swallowed by the dusk and the distance. Around her, the town slowly returns to their conversations. But something's different. There's energy now, purpose, the beginnings of hope. Tomorrow they'll start the real work, sorting out property claims, establishing new governance, helping families who lost everything find their footing again. It'll take years, maybe decades, but at least they get to try. And somewhere in the growing darkness, a man who doesn't believe in staying is already halfway to somewhere else, where someone needs what he offers. The moment when everything changes, the storm that breaks sieges, the gun that rights wrongs. He'll ride until he can't anymore, and towns like Red Hollow will remember him long after he's forgotten their names. That's the deal. That's the cost. And for now, in this moment, as Lena Voss stands in the street and watches her town come back to life, it's enough. 3 weeks after Colt Mercer rides out of Red Hollow, Lena Voss learns that winning doesn't mean the fight is over. The federal trial is set for late September in Alamogordo. Marshal Garrison sends word that they'll need at least 15 witnesses from Red Hollow to testify, and suddenly Lena's back to convincing people to step forward. Some are eager. Jacob Winters volunteers immediately, as does Sarah Chen. But others have developed cold feet now that the immediate threat is past. I've got a family to think about, Martin Cross says when Lena visits his farm. He's standing in a field that used to be twice the size before Hale forced him to sell half. Hale's locked up, but his people aren't. You heard what happened to the Hendersons. Lena had heard. The Henderson family testified to Marshal Garrison, gave detailed statements about how Hale's enforcers burned their barn when they refused to sell. 2 days later, someone poisoned their well. No proof who did it, but the message was clear. That's exactly why we need everyone to testify, Lena argues. The more witnesses, the harder it is to intimidate us all. We stand together, or we fall alone. Yeah, I've heard the speech. Martin wipes sweat from his face. But speeches don't rebuild barns or replace livestock. My kids drink from that well, Miss Voss. I can't risk them. She visits 8 more families that week, gets similar responses from 6 of them. Fear is a stubborn weed. It grows back fast, especially when watered with fresh threats. The town council meets to address the problem. They're holding sessions twice a week now, trying to establish some kind of normal governance. It's messy work. Thomas Byrne has ideas about proper procedure that clash with Marcus Webb's practical approach. And Sarah Chen keeps reminding them both that theory doesn't matter if people can't afford to eat. We need protection, Mary Stockton says. She's gotten thinner since the council formed, the weight of representation sitting heavy. Federal presence. Marshals stationed here until the trial's over. Garrison said he'd try, Thomas replies, but the territorial office is stretched thin. They've got 3 deputies covering an area the size of Connecticut. Best he could offer was periodic patrols. That's not enough. No, it's not, but it's what we have. Lena stares at the table. They're meeting in the bank again because the church is being repaired. Someone threw rocks through the windows 3 nights ago. Another anonymous message. We can hire our own security, use funds from Hale's safe to pay for protection. That money's meant for restitution, Jacob objects. Families who lost property, people who were cheated, won't matter if they're too scared to testify. We lose the trial, Hale walks on appeal, and every piece of land goes right back to his control, or to whoever he sold it to while running his empire. The council votes. 3 in favor of using Hale's money for security, 2 against. It's a thin margin, and Lena can see the doubt on everyone's faces. They're making decisions that affect the whole town based on uncertain information and fear-driven logic. Welcome to democracy, she thinks bitterly. They hire 4 men from Alamogordo, former cavalry, according to their references. They're supposed to patrol the town, watch for threats, provide visible deterrent. What they actually do is drink at the saloon and harass women who pass by. Within a week, Sarah's ready to fire them all. They're worse than useless, she snaps at the emergency council meeting. Yesterday, one of them propositioned my niece. She's 15. I'll talk to them, Marcus says, but his tone suggests talking isn't what he has in mind. Don't. Lena's voice is flat. We fire them, we eat the cost, and we find better people. We can't afford to have our own security become the problem we're trying to solve. They let the hired guns go. The men don't take it well. There's an incident involving broken bottles and threats. But they eventually leave. Red Hollow is back to protecting itself with farmers and shopkeepers who know how to shoot but aren't professional fighters. That's when the Night Riders start. The first attack comes on a Tuesday. 3 men on horseback, faces covered, ride through town after midnight firing shots into the air and throwing torches at buildings. They don't hit much. One torch lands on the land office roof but burns out before catching. Another breaks the window of the general store. It's more intimidation than destruction. But it works. By morning, 2 more families have packed up and left. One of them was scheduled to testify. This is going to keep happening, Jacob says. He's standing in the street looking at scorch marks on the land office wall. They'll escalate until we either give up the witnesses or fight back hard enough to make them stop. We can't give up the witnesses, Lena says. Then we fight back. Set watches, armed patrols, shoot anyone who rides through throwing fire. And if we kill someone, if it turns out to be a kid from a neighboring town who got paid $20 to make noise, we become the violent mob Hale's lawyers will use to paint us as lawless. Jacob kicks at a piece of charred wood. So we just take it? Let them burn us out piece by piece? No. We document everything, every attack, every threat, every instance of intimidation. We make it part of the case. Show the pattern of obstruction. Make it impossible for Hale to claim he's a legitimate businessman who got railroaded by an angry mob. That's a lot of faith in the legal system. It's all we've got. The attacks continue. Not every night, but often enough to keep everyone on edge. Sleep becomes a luxury. People start keeping rifles by their doors. Children stop playing in the streets after dark. Lena finds herself walking patrol with a shotgun at 2 a.m, watching shadows and jumping at sounds that turn out to be cats or wind. She's exhausted beyond measure, running on coffee and stubbornness, and she keeps thinking about what Colt said. about how fighting men like Hale is all he knows, all he's good for. She's starting to understand why he doesn't stay. This part, the slow grind of holding ground after the dramatic victory, is harder than the gunfight. At least the gunfight was quick. A letter arrives from Marshal Garrison in mid-August. The trial date is confirmed, September 22nd. He needs final witness count by the end of the month. He also includes a warning. Hale's legal team is first-rate, funded by his business partners, who have a vested interest in getting him acquitted. They'll challenge every piece of evidence, question every witness, look for any procedural mistake that could get the case dismissed. We need leverage, Lena tells the counsel. Something so damning that even the best lawyers can't explain it away. We've got the ledgers, Thomas says, the documentation of bribes, the forged deeds, which they'll argue were kept by disgruntled employees or fabricated by vindictive townspeople. We need something in Hale's own hand, something he can't deny. Mary Stockton leans forward. What about his personal correspondence? He must have written letters, sent telegrams. If we could find those, they'd be at his house, Sarah interrupts. The big place on the hill, but it's locked up tight. His lawyer's got the keys and there's a caretaker living there. Who's the caretaker? Lena asks. Edmund Price. Used to work as Hale's personal secretary before Hale moved him to property management. Would he talk to us? Sarah shrugs. He's loyal to Hale. But loyalty has limits, especially when the person you're loyal to is facing 20 years in federal prison. They visit Edmund Price the next day. His cottage sits at the base of the hill below Hale's mansion, and when he answers the door, he looks like a man who hasn't slept well in weeks. Mid-50s, thinning hair, the kind of nervous energy that comes from waiting for the other shoe to drop. Miss Voss, he says, recognizing her. I don't think we have anything to discuss. 5 minutes, Lena says. Just hear me out. He hesitates, then steps aside to let them in. The cottage is neat, almost obsessively organized. Books alphabetized on shelves, papers stacked in precise piles. The home of a man who deals with chaos by controlling what he can. I'm not testifying, Edmund says before they even sit down. Whatever you came here to ask, that's my answer. I'm not asking you to testify, Lena says. I'm asking you to think about what happens after the trial. Mr. Hale will be acquitted. His lawyers are expensive. I know. But even if he's acquitted on technicalities, his reputation is destroyed. His business partners are distancing themselves. Half his properties are frozen pending federal review. Even in the best-case scenario, his empire is fractured. And when powerful men fall, they look for scapegoats. Edmund's face twitches. What are you implying? I'm saying you kept his books, filed his papers, handled his correspondence. You know where the bodies are buried, metaphorically and maybe literally. When Hale needs someone to blame for evidence that surfaced, when he needs to explain how federal agents got access to his private records, who do you think he'll point at? I've been loyal. Loyalty doesn't matter to men like Hale. Results matter. And right now the result is he's in federal custody facing charges that could end him. Someone has to take the fall for that. It won't be his lawyers. It won't be his business partners. It'll be the secretary who had access to everything. Edmund sits down heavily. His hands are shaking. What do you want? His personal correspondence, letters to his business partners, telegrams arranging deals, anything that shows his criminal intent in his own words. In exchange, we make sure the federal prosecutors know you cooperated, that you're a witness, not a co-conspirator. If I do this, I'm a dead man. Hale's people are running scared, Sarah cuts in. Half of them are trying to cut deals, the other half are trying to disappear. The smart ones already figured out that being associated with Hale is toxic. You want to be the one person who stays loyal while everyone else saves themselves? Edmund stands and walks to the window. Outside, the mansion looms on the hill. Lena can imagine what he's thinking, years of service, of following orders, of being the reliable man who made the trains run on time, and now realizing that reliability just made him expendable. There's a safe in his study, Edmund finally says. Personal safe, different from the business accounts. He kept correspondence there, letters from territorial officials, judges, business partners, things he wanted to keep but didn't want in the official files. Can you access it? I have keys to the house, not the safe, but I know where he kept the combination written down. He was always afraid of forgetting it, so he hid the numbers in a book on his shelf. Volume 3 of Blackstone's commentaries. The page numbers of bookmarked passages, read in order. Lena feels something loosen in her chest. Will you help us? Edmund looks at her, and she sees the moment he decides. Not courage exactly, more like recognition that the ship is sinking and he needs to pick which lifeboat to jump into. Tomorrow night, after dark. I'll meet you at the back entrance. They return the following evening, Lena, Jacob, and Marcus. Edmund is waiting as promised, looking even more nervous than before. He unlocks the door with hands that fumble the keys twice. The mansion is dark and smells of disuse. Furniture sits under dust covers like ghosts. Their footsteps echo on hardwood floors as Edmund leads them through hallways lined with paintings of landscapes Hale probably never visited. The study is on the second floor, a large room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a desk that probably costs more than most people in Red Hollow earn in a year. Edmund goes straight to the shelves, running his finger along spines until he finds Blackstone's commentaries. Volume 3 has 4 bookmarks. Edmund checks the page numbers, 47, 108, 203, 356. He crosses to a painting of a fox hunt, swings it aside to reveal the safe, and spins the combination. 47, 108, 203, 356. The safe opens. Inside are stacks of letters, bundled with string. Edmund pulls them out carefully, handling them like they might explode. This is everything. Letters going back 5 years, some are innocent business correspondence. Others... He trails off, handing a letter to Lena. She reads by lamplight. It's from Judge Carson, and it's not even subtle. Regarding the Henderson property dispute, I've reviewed the documentation you provided and will rule in your favor at the hearing on the 15th. The usual consulting fee should be delivered to my clerk in the standard manner. Standard manner. Usual fee. The language of corruption dressed up as legitimate business. Lena reads another letter, this one from Sheriff Tate. The witness you were concerned about has been encouraged to reconsider his testimony. He will not be appearing at the inquiry. Please forward my retainer for next month at your earliest convenience. There are dozens of letters like this, a complete paper trail of Hale's network of bribed officials, paid witnesses, and corrupted legal processes, each one damning. Together, they're devastating. This is it, Jacob breathes. This is everything we needed. We should go, Marcus says, glancing at the door. The longer we're here... A sound from downstairs, footsteps. They all freeze. Edmund's face goes white. The caretaker doesn't make rounds at night. Someone else is here. Marcus moves to the door, peering into the hallway. Lamplight flickers from the main staircase. Multiple sets of footsteps, trying to be quiet and failing. Back way? Lena whispers. Servant stairs, end of the hall. Edmund's barely audible. They move fast but quiet, carrying the letters. Lena's heart hammers so hard she's sure everyone in the house can hear it. They reach the servants' stairs just as voices echo from the study they left. Someone's been in here. Safe's open. Find them. The stairs are narrow and dark. They descend as quickly as they dare, and Lena's mind is racing through scenarios. If they're caught in Hale's house with his private correspondence, it could be framed as burglary, breaking and entering. Everything they found could be ruled inadmissible. They reach the ground floor, and Edmund leads them through the kitchen to a side door. Outside, the night air hits like a blessing. They're crossing the lawn when a shout comes from the house. There, moving toward the trees. Run, Marcus says, and they do. The property is large, and they're halfway to the boundary fence before their pursuers make it outside. Lena's lungs burn. She's not built for sprinting, especially carrying an armful of correspondence, and her legs feel like they're moving through water. Jacob boosts her over the fence first, then passes the letters through. Marcus comes next, then Edmund. Behind them, the pursuers are gaining ground. They crash through brush on the other side, heading toward where they left their horses. Lena's dress catches on thorns, and she hears it rip but doesn't slow down. The horses are there, thank everything, and they mount up in a chaos of fumbling and cursing. They'll know I helped you, Edmund gasps. Then you're coming with us, Lena says. Marshal Garrison needs to hear your testimony anyway. They ride hard through the darkness. Behind them, she can hear pursuit starting up, but horses need time to saddle, and their head start is enough. By the time they reach the edge of Red Hollow, their pursuers have fallen back. They don't stop at town. Keep riding east, toward Alamogordo, toward federal protection. They'll send word back for someone to bring supplies and clothes. But right now, distance is more important than comfort. Dawn finds them 20 miles from Red Hollow, exhausted and filthy, but still moving. The letters are secured in saddlebags, and Edmund is slumped in his saddle looking like he's aged 10 years overnight. "I betrayed him," Edmund says. "Not to anyone in particular. 20 years of service, and I betrayed him in one night." "You chose the law over a criminal," Lena corrects. "That's not betrayal. That's doing the right thing after too long doing the wrong one." "He'll kill me for this." "He'll try. Difference is, now you've got federal protection and evidence that makes you valuable. They'll keep you safe to keep their case intact." They reach Alamogordo 3 days later. Marshal Garrison takes one look at them and the letters, and his expression shifts from concern to something like satisfaction. "This changes everything," he says after reading through a dozen of the letters. "Judge Carson's been untouchable for years. Sheriff Tate ran that county like his personal kingdom. With this, we can bring charges against the whole network." "Will it be enough?" Lena asks. "For the trial? Enough?" "Miss Voss, this is prosecutorial gold. Hale's lawyers will try to argue the ledgers were fabricated, that witness testimony is unreliable. But these are letters in the handwriting of respected officials, discussing crimes in explicit detail. We can get handwriting experts to verify authenticity. We can subpoena the officials themselves and watch them either commit perjury or turn on Hale to save themselves. So we won?" Garrison's smile fades. "We've got ammunition, but the trial's still ahead, and Hale's lawyers are good. They'll fight every piece of evidence, challenge every witness. It'll be ugly and long, and there's no guarantee of the outcome. But yes, with this, we've got a real chance." The trial begins on a Tuesday morning in late September. The courthouse in Alamogordo is the biggest building in town, a 2-story brick structure that normally handles land disputes and petty theft. For the Hale trial, it's packed beyond capacity. People stand in the aisles, more crowd outside waiting for news. Reporters have come from as far as Denver and San Francisco. This isn't just about one corrupt land baron anymore. It's become a symbol of whether the law can touch men who've made themselves powerful enough to seem untouchable. Lena sits in the witness section with 15 other people from Red Hollow. She's wearing her best dress, the one she saved for her wedding before her husband died. It's out of fashion and the fabric is starting to thin, but it's respectable. That matters. Everything about this trial is theater as much as law. Hale enters in shackles, but somehow still manages to look composed. His suit is fresh, his hair pomaded, his expression carefully neutral. He nods to his lawyers, 3 of them, all wearing expensive clothes and carrying expensive briefcases. The lead attorney is Harrison Blackwood, famous for getting railroad executives acquitted on corruption charges in Utah. The judge is Marianne Alcott, a territorial appointment with a reputation for fairness and a complete lack of patience for nonsense. She's in her 60s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, and when she gavels the court to order, the room goes silent instantly. "The territory versus Victor Hale," she announces. Charges include fraud, extortion, conspiracy, bribery of public officials, and witness intimidation. How does the defendant plead? Blackwood stands. "Not guilty on all counts, Your Honor." "Very well. Opening statements." "Prosecution?" The territorial prosecutor is a man named Samuel Reeves. He's younger than Lena expected, maybe 40, with the kind of intensity that suggests he takes this personally. He approaches the jury, 12 men, all property owners, all chosen after 2 days of voir dire that was more like warfare. "Gentlemen of the jury," Reeves begins, "over the next several weeks you will hear a story about power, about what happens when a man decides that laws are suggestions, that contracts are weapons, and that human dignity is negotiable. You will hear from witnesses who lost their homes, their livelihoods, their futures, because one man wanted to build an empire and didn't care who he destroyed to do it." He pauses, letting that sink in. "The defense will tell you this is a case about an ambitious businessman who got caught in the crosshairs of jealous competitors and angry losers. They will suggest that Mr. Hale's only crime was being more successful than those around him. They will paint him as a victim of circumstance." Another pause. "We will prove them wrong. With documents, with testimony, with evidence so overwhelming that the only reasonable verdict is guilty. Because the law doesn't stop applying just because you're rich. Justice doesn't have a price tag, and no matter how powerful you become, you are not above the consequences of your actions." It's a good opening. Strong. Lena sees a few jurors nodding. Then Blackwood stands for the defense. "Jiaoshi." "Gentlemen," he says, his voice smooth and reasonable, "my colleague just gave you a stirring speech about power and justice. It was moving, it was passionate. It was also a distraction from the fact that the prosecution's case is built on a foundation of hearsay, questionable documents, and testimony from people who have every reason to lie." He walks along the jury box, making eye contact with each man. Victor Hale is a businessman, a successful one. He made deals that others couldn't make. He saw opportunities that others missed. And yes, he profited. That's not a crime. That's commerce. But when his success made others envious, when his accomplishments made others feel inadequate, they decided to tear him down. Not through honest competition. They couldn't match him there. But through legal persecution dressed up as justice. Blackwood gestures to the witness section. "You will hear from people who claim Mr. Hale stole their land. What you won't hear is that every single one of them signed contracts willingly, that every transaction was documented, that every legal requirement was met. You'll hear claims of intimidation, but no proof. Allegations of corruption, but no concrete evidence. Accusations of violence, but no witnesses who can actually place Mr. Hale at any scene of wrongdoing." He returns to his table. "At the end of this trial, when you've heard all the evidence, or rather the lack of evidence, I'm confident you'll see the truth. Victor Hale is not a criminal. He's a scapegoat, and acquitting him won't just be the right verdict. It'll be the only verdict that justice allows." The jury looks less certain now. Lena's stomach knots. Blackwood is good. Better than good. He just made Hale sound like a persecuted entrepreneur instead of a predator. The prosecution starts with the paper trail. Reeves calls Edmund Price to the stand, and Edmund walks to the witness box looking like he might vomit. He's sworn in, takes his seat, and Reeves begins gently. "Mr. Price, how long did you work for the defendant?" 23 years, started as a filing clerk, worked up to personal secretary." "In that capacity, what were your responsibilities?" "I managed Mr. Hale's correspondence, maintained his personal files, handled confidential documents." "Were you aware of any illegal activities?" Edmund hesitates. This is the moment. If he backs out now, the case weakens significantly. Lena can see him wrestling with it. Loyalty versus survival, the life he built versus the truth he knows. "Yes," Edmund finally says. "I was aware." Blackwood doesn't even stand. "Objection. Vague and conclusory." "Sustained," Judge Alcott says. "Be more specific, Mr. Reeves." Reeves nods. "Mr. Price, did you ever witness Mr. Hale bribing public officials?" "I didn't witness the bribes directly, but I processed the payments, handled the correspondence arranging them, filed the letters confirming the transactions." "Can you give an example?" Edmund describes the payment system to Judge Carson. How money would be delivered through intermediaries, always in cash, always with a paper trail that looked like consulting fees or speaking honorariums. How cases would then be decided in Hale's favor regardless of merit. Blackwood cross-examines aggressively. "Mr. Price, you're testifying against your employer in exchange for immunity from prosecution, correct?" "Yes. So you have a strong incentive to tell the prosecution what they want to hear." "I'm telling the truth." "Are you? Or are you a disgruntled employee who got passed over for promotion and decided to manufacture evidence for revenge?" "That's not... I was loyal to Mr. Hale for over 20 years. Until you weren't. Until you broke into his private residence, stole his personal correspondence, and handed it to his enemies. That's quite a reversal." Edmund's face reddens. "I didn't steal. You took documents without permission. That's theft, Mr. Price. And now you're using those stolen documents to testify against the man you claim to have served faithfully. Doesn't that strike you as dishonest?" "Objection," Reeves calls, argumentative. "Sustained." But the damage is done. Blackwood has planted doubt. The jury looks at Edmund with skepticism now. The trial continues for 3 weeks. Witness after witness takes the stand. Jacob Winters testifies about losing his farm. Sarah Chen describes the economic pressure Hale applied to her business. Mary Stockton breaks down crying while recounting how Hale's men beat her husband. Each time, Blackwood tears them apart on cross-examination. He doesn't dispute that bad things happened. He just questions whether Hale was responsible. Maybe it was overzealous employees acting without authority. Maybe it was misunderstandings. Maybe it was the witnesses misremembering under the influence of mob mentality. When Lena's turn comes, she's been watching long enough to understand the strategy. Blackwood will try to paint her as the ringleader, the person who orchestrated a conspiracy against an innocent businessman. She needs to stay calm, stick to facts, and refuse to be baited. Reeves questions her first, establishing her background and her relationship to Hale's crimes. She describes finding her father beaten in his field, the legal battles over the land deed, the years spent gathering evidence. Miss Voss, why did you spend 6 years building this case? Because I wanted justice for my father, for my family, for everyone Hale hurt. Did you ever consider giving up? Every day. But then I'd see another family lose their home, another person get beaten for standing up to him, and I'd remember why I started. When Blackwood stands for cross-examination, his smile is almost sympathetic. Miss Voss, I'm sorry for your loss, truly. Losing a parent is difficult. Thank you, she says carefully. But grief can cloud judgment, can't it? Make us see malice where there's only misfortune? My father's beating wasn't misfortune, it was deliberate. Can you prove Mr. Hale ordered it? The men who did it worked for him. Worked for him, not were explicitly ordered by him to commit violence. There's a difference, isn't there? Lena takes a breath. Mr. Hale created an environment where violence was rewarded, where his enforcers knew that hurting people who resisted would earn them bonuses and promotions. He didn't need to give explicit orders. He just needed to make clear what results he wanted, and that he didn't care how they were achieved. That's quite an interpretation. Do you have any direct evidence? I have 6 years of documented evidence showing a pattern of behavior. I have letters in his own handwriting discussing how to pressure people into selling. I have witness testimony from dozens of people. I have his own employee confirming the corruption. That's not interpretation, that's fact. Blackwood's smile tightens. Your Honor, could you instruct the witness to answer the questions asked, not make speeches? Judge Alcott looks at Lena. The witness will confine herself to answering the specific question, but Lena sees it in Blackwood's eyes. He expected her to break or fumble or get angry. Instead, she met him evenly, and now he's adjusting strategy. The letters are entered into evidence. Handwriting experts confirm they're authentic. Judge Carson is called to testify and invokes his Fifth Amendment rights. Sheriff Tate does the same. Their refusal to testify speaks volumes. Innocent men don't hide behind constitutional protections. The defense calls character witnesses. Business leaders who praise Hale's acumen. Ministers who describe his charitable donations. Society figures who attest to his upstanding nature. It's all surface polish, but it works on some jurors. Lena can see a few of them softening. Then the prosecution calls its final witness, a federal agent who investigated financial records. He testifies that Hale moved money through shell corporations, hid assets in other people's names, and maintained 3 separate sets of accounting books. The complexity suggests sophistication, not innocent mistakes. Closing arguments happen on a Friday. Reeves summarizes the evidence methodically, building layer upon layer until the weight is undeniable. Blackwood counters with emotion, painting Hale as a victim of coordinated persecution by jealous inferiors. The jury deliberates for 4 days. Lena spends those days unable to eat, unable to sleep, pacing the boarding house where she's staying. Every outcome plays through her mind. Acquittal would mean everything was for nothing. Conviction would mean justice, but also exposure. Everyone will know she was the one who brought Hale down, and his remaining allies will have targets painted on their backs. On Tuesday afternoon, word comes. The jury has reached a verdict. The courthouse fills again. Lena takes her seat, hands clenched so tight her nails draw blood from her palms. Hale sits at the defense table looking confident. Too confident. Does he know something? Did his lawyers buy a juror? Is this all about to collapse? Judge Alcott enters. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stands. He's a rancher from outside Alamogordo, a man whose face has been unreadable throughout the trial. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of fraud, how do you find? Guilty. Lena's breath stops. On the charge of extortion? Guilty. Conspiracy to commit bribery? Guilty. Charge after charge. Guilty. 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 Not on everything. The jury acquits on 2 counts where the evidence was thinner, but on enough. On more than enough. Hale's expression doesn't change, but his lawyers do. They exchange glances that speak of appeals and procedural challenges and the long fight ahead. Judge Alcott speaks. Mr. Hale, you have been found guilty of serious crimes against the people of this territory. Before I pass sentence, do you have anything to say? Hale stands. For a moment, Lena thinks he might apologize, might show some recognition of the harm he caused. Instead, he speaks calmly, like he's discussing weather. Your Honor, I respect this court's verdict, though I maintain my innocence. I believe history will show that I was a businessman who made difficult decisions in difficult times, and that my prosecution was politically motivated. I have faith that the appeals process will reveal the truth. No remorse, no acknowledgement, just the absolute certainty that he's right, and everyone else is wrong. Judge Alcott's expression hardens. Mr. Hale, I've been on this bench for 18 years. I've seen criminals of every type. Violent men, desperate men, broken men. You're none of those. You're worse. You're a man who weaponized the law, who turned the tools of civilization into instruments of oppression. You didn't just steal property, you stole hope. You didn't just hurt individuals, you corrupted entire systems. She pauses. The maximum sentence for your combined crimes is 45 years. Given your age and the severity of your actions, I'm imposing the maximum on all counts, to be served consecutively. Additionally, all assets currently held in your name or connected to your business operations are subject to seizure and restitution. You will spend the rest of your natural life in federal prison, and whatever wealth you accumulated through crime will be returned to those you wronged. Hale's composure finally cracks. Just for a second, but Lena sees it. The realization that this is real, that his lawyers can't save him, that the appeals will take years and probably fail. He's finished. Marshal Garrison escorts Hale from the courtroom. As he passes the witness section, his eyes find Lena's. There's no rage there, just calculation. Even now, even beaten, he's already planning his next move. Outside the courthouse, people from Red Hollow celebrate. Not loudly, it's been too hard for that, but with quiet satisfaction. Jacob claps Marcus on the shoulder. Sarah hugs Mary. Thomas Burns stands apart, looking like the weight he's carried for 5 years just lifted. Lena doesn't join them. She walks to the edge of town to where the desert starts and the buildings end. The sun is setting, painting everything gold and red. She thinks about her father, about whether this is what he would have wanted, justice through law instead of justice through a rope. She thinks so. He believed in systems, in the idea that civilization meant rules applied fairly to everyone. Miss Voss. She turns to find Marshal Garrison approaching. Just wanted to let you know the restitution process will start next month. Your family's land will be returned within 60 days. Full clear title, all claims dismissed. Thank you. Don't thank me. You did this. You and everyone who refused to give up. He pauses. There's something else. Hale's operation was bigger than we knew. The letters you recovered have given us leads on corruption in 4 other territories. We'll be making arrests over the next year, building cases. Your work here sparked something bigger than Red Hollow. Lena doesn't know how to feel about that. Pride, maybe? Or just exhaustion at the thought of more trials, more testimony, more years spent fighting. Will you need me to testify again? Probably, but that's months away. For now, go home. Rebuild. Let yourself rest. Rest. The word sounds foreign. She returns to Red Hollow a week later. The town looks different somehow, though nothing physical has changed. Maybe it's just that people are standing straighter, moving with purpose instead of fear. The council holds a celebration, though Lena skips most of it. She's not built for crowds anymore, and the attention makes her uncomfortable. She did what needed doing, but that doesn't mean she wants to be treated like a hero. Instead, she walks to the land that was her father's. That's hers again now, officially and legally. The fields are overgrown. 5 years of neglect will do that. The house needs repairs. The barn's roof is half collapsed. It'll take years to make it productive again. Years of work with no guarantee of success. But it's hers. That matters more than she can articulate. She's standing there surveying the damage and planning the repairs when she hears hoofbeats. For a panicked moment, she thinks it's another attack, more retaliation. Then she sees the rider and relaxes slightly. Colt Mercer approaches slowly. His horse looks tired, like they've come a long way. He dismounts, ties the reins loosely, and walks over to where Lena stands. "Heard the verdict," he says. "Thought I'd check in." "You came all the way back just to check in?" "Was in the area, more or less." They stand in silence for a moment, looking at the ruined farm. "You did good," Colt finally says. "Saw it through. Didn't back down when it got hard. Learned from the best." "No, you already knew, just needed permission to use what you knew." He looks at her. "What's next?" "Rebuild. Run the farm. Maybe help other towns that are dealing with what we dealt with. Marshal Garrison says there are cases building across the territory." "You going to testify?" "If they need me." "Yeah." Colt nods like he expected that answer. "Be careful. Men like Hale have long memories and longer reach. Even from prison." "I know." And I'm tired of being careful. Spent 6 years being careful, hiding what I was doing, operating in shadows, terrified every moment that I'd be discovered. I'm done with that. If Hale's people come for me, they come, but I'm not going to live in fear anymore. "Fair enough." Colt turns back toward his horse. "Take care of yourself, Miss Voss." "You too, Mercer. Whatever you're riding toward." He mounts up, tips his hat, and rides west. Always west. Toward whatever wrong needs righting, whatever fight needs finishing. Lena watches him go until he's just a speck on the horizon. Then she turns back to the farm, to the work ahead, to the life she gets to build now that the fighting's done. It won't be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is. But it'll be hers. And after everything, that's enough. The first snow comes early that year, dusting Red Hollow in white by mid-November. Lena's in the fields when it starts, trying to clear enough brush to plant winter wheat come spring. Her hands are blistered, her back aches, and she's pretty sure she's doing everything wrong, but the work feels good, honest, like she's building something instead of tearing something down. She's dragging a fallen branch toward the burn pile when she sees the rider approaching from town. It's Billy Martinez, one of the younger men who helped guard Hale during those tense weeks. He's riding fast, and Lena's stomach tightens. Fast riders mean bad news. "Miss Voss," Billy calls as he reins in. "Council's meeting, emergency session. Thomas sent me to fetch you." "What happened?" "Letter came. Federal Marshal's office. Something about Hale." Lena drops the branch and wipes her hands on her work pants. "Give me 5 minutes." She rides back to town with Billy, and the whole way her mind cycles through possibilities. Hale escaped. Hale died. Hale's lawyers got the conviction overturned, each scenario worse than the last. The council's gathered in the bank again. Thomas, Jacob, Sarah, Marcus, Mary, all of them look grim. A letter sits on the table, official federal seal broken. "What is it?" Lena asks. Thomas slides the letter toward her. "Read it yourself." The letter's from Marshal Garrison. Formal language, official tone, but the content makes Lena's blood run cold. Hale's been moved to a different facility, higher security, farther from the territory. The reason? Credible threats against witnesses. 3 people who testified have received anonymous letters containing detailed descriptions of their daily routines, their families, their vulnerabilities. The letters don't explicitly threaten violence, but the implication is clear. "They know where we live," Mary says quietly. "What we do, who we care about." "Hale's in prison," Marcus counters. "How's he sending letters?" "He doesn't need to send them himself," Jacob says. "He's got people, business partners who lost money when he went down, associates who are worried they're next. All it takes is one of them hiring someone to do the legwork." Sarah looks at Lena. "You're mentioned specifically. The letter says you're considered the highest priority target." Lena reads that section. Cold clinical language about threat assessment and recommended security protocols. She should consider relocation, should vary her routine, should avoid being alone in isolated areas. "I'm not leaving," she says. "Lena, I'm not leaving. We spent 6 years fighting for this town. I just got my land back. I'm not going to abandon it because Hale's people want to scare me." "This isn't about being scared," Thomas says. "This is about being smart. If they're targeting you specifically, staying here makes you vulnerable. Leaving makes me defeated. Which do you think sends a stronger message?" The council argues for an hour. Jacob thinks she should at least stay in town, not out at the isolated farm. Sarah suggests hiring protection. Marcus wants to organize armed patrols again. Mary just looks worried, like she's already planning Lena's funeral. They compromise on increased vigilance. Lena agrees to vary her routine, to carry her rifle everywhere, to check in with someone daily. In exchange, she gets to stay on her land and keep working the farm. That night, alone in the farmhouse, every sound makes her jump. The wind rattling shutters becomes footsteps. A branch scraping the roof becomes someone climbing up. She sits in the dark with her rifle across her lap, watching the windows, and realizes this is exactly what they want. Not to kill her, that would make her a martyr, but to make her live in constant fear, to drain her energy fighting shadows, to slowly break her down until she gives up on her own. She doesn't sleep, just sits there until dawn, and when the sun finally rises, she's exhausted and angry, and more determined than ever not to let them win. The threats continue. Not directly to her, nothing that could be traced back to Hale's people, but a barn burns 2 towns over, belongs to someone who testified. A witness from the trial gets jumped by 3 men in an alley, beaten badly enough to need a doctor, but not badly enough to die. The message spreads. Talking carries a cost. 2 families who testified move away. Just pack up and leave, citing business opportunities elsewhere. But everyone knows the real reason. Fear is contagious, and it's spreading. The council meets again in December. They're trying to organize Christmas celebrations, something to lift spirits and remind people that Red Hollow is more than just the place where they fought Hale. But the conversation keeps drifting back to security, to threats, to the question of how long they can maintain this. We need help, Sarah says. Federal marshals, territorial militia, something. We can't keep living like this. Garrison says they're stretched thin, Thomas replies. Every town that testified is requesting protection. There aren't enough marshals to go around. What about Mercer? Marcus asks. He came back before. Maybe he'd... No, Lena interrupts. We can't keep depending on him to save us. That's not sustainable. We need to figure this out ourselves. How? Mary's voice is sharp with frustration. We're farmers and shopkeepers. We're not fighters. We did the brave thing once, and now we're paying for it. At some point, we have to ask if it was worth it. The question hangs in the air. Was it worth it? They got justice, got their land back, got the satisfaction of seeing Hale in chains. But now they're living with constant fear, watching their neighbors leave, wondering if every stranger is a threat. Lena thinks about her father, about whether he'd say the fight was worth this cost. She thinks he would. He believed in standing for something even when standing was hard, especially when it was hard. It was worth it, she says, because the alternative was living under Hale's control forever. At least now we're fighting for ourselves, not cowering under someone else's boot. Easy to say when you're not the one with 3 kids, Mary snaps, when it's not your family at risk. Everyone's family is at risk. That's the point. We either stand together or we fall apart. And if we fall apart, then Hale wins even from prison. The meeting breaks up without resolution. They agree to continue the patrols, continue the vigilance, continue hoping that the threats eventually fade. But Lena can see the cracks forming. The community that came together to fight Hale is starting to fracture under the pressure of what came after. Christmas comes and goes, muted and tense. New Year arrives with snow and silence. January brings a letter from Marshal Garrison with updates on the broader investigation. Arrests have been made in 3 territories based on evidence from Hale's letters. Judge Carson resigned rather than face charges. Sheriff Tate is awaiting trial. It's progress. It's justice spreading beyond Red Hollow. But it doesn't make the threats stop. February brings the worst incident yet. Lena's in town buying supplies when she hears shouting from the direction of the schoolhouse. She runs with a dozen others to find smoke pouring from the building. Someone set a fire. Accelerant splashed on the back wall, lit while school was in session. The teacher got the kids out in time. All of them safe, coughing and scared, but alive. The schoolhouse burns while people form bucket lines, but it's too late. The building's a loss. Standing in the crowd, watching flames consume the place where Red Hollow's children learned to read, Lena feels something inside her shift. This isn't about intimidating witnesses anymore. This is about destroying the town itself, burning it down piece by piece until there's nothing left worth saving. We need to fight back, Jacob says that night. The council's meeting in Sarah's store because the bank feels too exposed. Not just defend, actually go after whoever's doing this. How? Thomas asks. We don't know who they are. Could be anyone. Could be people from out of town or people living right here pretending to be on our side. Then we find out. We investigate. We're not investigators, Sarah interrupts. We tried that once with Hale. It took 6 years and outside help to finish it. We can't afford 6 more years of this. So what, we just take it? Let them burn us out? I'm saying we need to be realistic about what we can do. The argument escalates. Voices rising, tempers fraying. These are people who've been through too much together, and the stress is showing. Marcus accuses Thomas of being too cautious. Sarah and Mary get into it about priorities, protecting people versus protecting property. Jacob slams his hand on the table so hard, a jar of nails falls over and scatters across the floor. Lena watches the council fall apart and realizes this is the real danger. Not the threats, not the fires. The danger is that they'll turn on each other, fragment into factions, become too divided to function. That's what Hale's people are counting on. Break the community, and the individuals become easy targets. Stop, she says. Not loud, but firm enough to cut through the argument. Everyone stop. They do, looking at her. We're doing exactly what they want. Fighting each other instead of fighting them. This is the strategy. Keep hitting us until we collapse from within. Then what do you suggest? Thomas asks. We stop reacting. Stop letting them set the terms. We go on offense. Offense how? We make noise. We contact every newspaper in the territory. We tell them what's happening, that witnesses in a federal case are being systematically intimidated and attacked. We make it public enough that whoever's doing this has to worry about scrutiny. Right now, they operate in shadows. We drag them into light. Marcus nods slowly. Publicity as protection. Exactly. If we're just a forgotten town getting picked apart, nobody cares. But if we're a story, witnesses being terrorized, children's school burned, all because we stood up to corruption, that's news. That brings pressure. Federal government doesn't want headlines about how they can't protect their own witnesses. It's not a perfect plan. Publicity comes with risks of its own. But it's something other than just waiting for the next attack. They vote. 4 in favor, 1 abstention. Sarah takes responsibility for contacting newspapers. She's got the best writing skills and the clearest head for this kind of thing. Within 2 weeks, stories start appearing. First in territorial papers, then picked up by larger publications. Frontier town under siege after corruption trial. Witnesses face retaliation in land baron case. School burned in campaign of terror. The attention brings results. A territorial marshal arrives to conduct formal investigation into the school fire. Federal prosecutors announce they're pursuing charges of witness intimidation. Marshal Garrison himself shows up in March with 3 deputies and authorization to establish temporary presence. This is unsustainable, he tells the council, but it'll give you breathing room. 3 months, maybe 4. Use that time to make yourselves less vulnerable. How? Mary asks. Harden your targets. The school needs to be rebuilt with the kind of security that makes it not worth attacking. Same with the land office, the bank, any building that represents what you're trying to protect. Make it harder for them to hurt you. It's practical advice, but expensive. The town's funds are limited, and most people are still recovering financially from Hale's years of exploitation. But they make it work. Volunteer labor, donated materials, the kind of community effort that only happens when survival depends on it. Lena spends her days working the farm and her evenings helping rebuild the school. She's got no experience with construction, but she can swing a hammer and follow directions. The physical work helps, gives her something to focus on besides the constant low-level anxiety of wondering when the next attack will come. She's working on the school roof one evening in late March when someone calls her name from below. She climbs down to find a stranger standing in the street. Mid-30s, well-dressed, with the kind of grooming that says he's not from around here. Miss Voss, my name is Daniel Crane. I'm a reporter with the Denver Post. I was hoping to interview you about the situation here. Lena's immediately suspicious. How'd you find me? Asked around town. People were happy to point me toward you. Seems like you're something of a local hero. I'm just someone who did what needed doing. That's exactly the kind of story our readers want to hear. Woman who brought down a corrupt land baron, now facing retaliation from his associates. It's compelling. It's dangerous, Lena corrects, for everyone involved. You publish my name and face in a Denver paper. You paint a target on my back. The target's already there, Crane says gently, but publicity can be protection. Hard to quietly disappear someone when thousands of people know their name and story. Lena studies him. He seems genuine, but reporters have agendas. She needs to know his before she says anything that could be used against her or the town. "Why are you really here?" she asks. Crane considers the question. "Honestly, because I'm tired of writing about politicians and railroad tycoons. I want to write about people who actually matter, people who fight back against the kind of corruption that's eating this territory from the inside. Your story matters. What happened here matters. And if I can tell it in a way that helps protect you and this town, then I'm doing something worthwhile for once." It's the right answer. Maybe too right, polished smooth like he's said it before, but Lena wants to believe it. Needs to believe that the fight they're in serves some larger purpose. "All right," she says, "but we do this my way. You talk to everyone, not just me. You get the full story, not just the dramatic parts. And you run anything you write by the council before publication." Deal. The interview takes 3 days. Crane talks to Lena, the council, townspeople, even Edmund Price, who's still in protective custody but willing to speak on record. He takes notes constantly, asks sharp questions, and doesn't seem satisfied with surface answers. When he leaves, he promises the story will run within 2 weeks. It runs on the front page of the Denver Post on April 12th. Full spread, including photographs of the burned school and quotes from a dozen witnesses. The headline reads, "Red Hollow's Stand, How One Town Fought Corruption and Paid the Price." The article is everything Crane promised. It tells the full story. Hale's crimes, the trial, the conviction, and the campaign of retaliation that followed. It names names, documents incidents, and makes clear that witness intimidation is ongoing and systematic. It also makes Lena Voss a public figure. Her photograph, taken while she was working on the school roof, hammer in hand, accompanies the story. Within days, other papers pick it up. By the end of the month, she's received letters from as far away as Boston and San Francisco. Some supportive, some threatening, all proof that she's no longer just a widow trying to save her farm. She's become a symbol. The attention brings mixed results. On one hand, the federal government commits more resources to protecting witnesses. On the other hand, Lena can't go anywhere without being recognized. People treat her differently, some with admiration, others with resentment. A few seem to think she orchestrated everything for personal glory. "Fame's a strange thing," Thomas observes during a council meeting in May. "We wanted attention to protect ourselves. Now we've got so much attention we can't move without everyone watching." "Better than being forgotten," Sarah says. But she sounds uncertain. The threats don't stop, but they change. Less physical violence, more legal harassment. Hale's lawyers file motions claiming witness tampering, arguing that the publicity campaign amounts to prejudicing potential appeals. They demand investigations into who coordinated the media outreach, suggesting it's part of a conspiracy to deny their client due process. It's nonsense, but it ties everyone up in depositions and legal responses. Lena spends more time talking to lawyers than working her farm, and the spring planting suffers for it. She's in Alamogordo for another deposition in June when she runs into Colt Mercer. He's standing outside the federal building, leaning against a post like he's got all the time in the world. When he sees her, something that might be a smile crosses his face. "Miss Voss, you're famous now." "Don't remind me. Saw the article, good piece. Crane did right by you." "Did right by the truth anyway. Whether that helps or hurts remains to be seen." She studies him. "What are you doing here?" "Testifying. Different case, but related. Turns out Hale's network extended into New Mexico. They've got some of his associates on trial for land fraud." "You going to stick around after?" "Probably not. Got word about a situation in Arizona that needs looking into." Of course he does. Because Colt Mercer doesn't stay anywhere long enough to see the endings, just the turning points. They walk together toward the boarding house where Lena's staying. It's late afternoon, the kind of heat that makes everything shimmer, and the streets are mostly empty. "How are you holding up?" Colt asks. "Really? Tired. Angry. Scared most of the time, but trying not to show it. The usual." "That's honest. You asked for real. I'm giving you real. This isn't what I thought winning would feel like. I thought there'd be relief, closure. Instead, it's just different kinds of fighting." "Always is," Colt says. "Men like Hale don't go down clean. They leave messes behind. People who profited from their corruption, systems they built that outlast them. You didn't just beat one man. You exposed a network. That's bigger work with bigger consequences. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth it. Colt stops walking. You wonder that? Don't you? You've been doing this longer than I have, fighting people like Hale, seeing the aftermath. Does it ever actually get better? He's quiet for a long moment. When he speaks, his voice is careful. Sometimes, not always. But the alternative is letting them win without a fight, and I can't live with that. Can you? Lena thinks about her father, about the farm that's hers again, about the children who'll attend the rebuilt school and grow up knowing that standing up to wrong is possible, even when it's hard. No, she admits. I can't. Then you've got your answer. They reach the boarding house. Colt tips his hat, starts to turn away. Mercer, Lena calls, if you ever get tired of riding, if you ever want to stay somewhere, Red Hollow could use someone like you. He smiles, and it's sad and kind and completely without hope. Appreciate the offer, but men like me don't get to stay. We're only good for the beginning of things, not the middle or end. You'll do fine without me. I know, doesn't mean the offer expires. He rides out the next morning. Lena watches from her window as he heads west, always west, and wonders if she'll ever see him again. Probably not. Men like Colt Mercer are storms that pass through. You don't get to keep them. She returns to Red Hollow the following week to find the town changed again. The new school is nearly finished, built sturdier than the old one. Someone donated funds for a small library. The land office has been reorganized with proper filing systems. Little improvements, each one a statement that Red Hollow is rebuilding, not just surviving. But there are losses too. The Henderson family finally left, unable to take the pressure anymore. 2 other families followed. The town that fought together is slowly being winnowed down to those stubborn or desperate enough to stay. Lena throws herself into the farm work. The crops are late going in, but she manages to get wheat and corn planted by early July. It's not professional work, the rows aren't straight, the spacing is inconsistent, but it's hers. Every seed she plants feels like an act of defiance. August brings news that Hale's appeal was denied. His lawyers tried every angle. Procedural errors, prejudicial publicity, improper jury instructions. The appellate court rejected all of it. The conviction stands. There's a small celebration in Red Hollow, but it's muted. Everyone knows this isn't really over. Hale still has resources, still has people working for him. Even from prison, he casts a shadow. September marks 1 year since the trial. The council holds a memorial service for everyone who was hurt in the fight against Hale. Not just those who died, but those who lost homes, livelihoods, peace of mind. It's somber and honest, acknowledging that victory came with real cost. Lena stands in the back of the church, listening to people share their stories. Jacob talks about rebuilding his farm. Sarah describes the slow process of recovering financially. Mary breaks down remembering her husband, who died before seeing justice done. When it's Lena's turn to speak, she almost declines. What is there to say that hasn't been said? But people are looking at her expectantly, waiting for wisdom or inspiration she's not sure she has. I don't have answers, she finally says. I don't know if what we did was worth the cost. I don't know if we'll ever feel safe again. What I know is this. We didn't let them break us. We fought back when fighting seemed impossible. We stood up when standing up meant risking everything, and we're still here. She pauses, looking at the faces around her. Tired faces, scared faces, but also determined faces. People who've been through fire and came out changed but not destroyed. That's not nothing, she continues. That's everything, because the real fight isn't against Hale or his people. It's against the part of ourselves that wants to give up, that wants to accept injustice because fighting is hard. We proved we can win that fight. Whatever comes next, we've already won the only battle that matters. It's not a great speech. It doesn't inspire cheers or change minds, but people nod and a few wipe away tears. And when the service ends, there's a sense of shared understanding. They're in this together, for better or worse, until the end. The harvest comes in October, and it's smaller than Lena hoped, but better than she feared. Enough to get through winter with some left to sell. She stands in her fields as the sun sets, looking at the work of her hands, and feels something she hasn't felt in a long time. Not happiness exactly, not peace, but something adjacent to both. The knowledge that she's building a life instead of just surviving one. That evening, sitting on her porch with coffee going cold in her cup, She thinks about Colt Mercer, wonders where he is now, what fight he's in the middle of. Whether he ever thinks about Red Hollow or the people who stood their ground here, she decides he probably doesn't. Men like him move forward, always forward, because looking back is how you get stuck. But she'll remember him, the man who appeared when hope was dying and disappeared before the celebrating started. The storm that changed everything and left before anyone could thank him properly. Red Hollow will remember too. In stories passed down, in the rebuilt school where children learn about standing up to wrong, in the way people here look at injustice and think, maybe, just maybe, fighting back is possible. And somewhere out west, Colt Mercer rides toward another town that's breaking, another person running out of time, another wrong that needs righting. He'll never know the full extent of what he started here, never see the library that gets built or the families that move in once word spreads that Red Hollow is safe again. Never know that his name becomes shorthand for the kind of person who shows up when needed most. That's the trade. That's the cost. He gives them hope and moves on before it can disappoint him. And Lena Voss stands on her reclaimed land, watching the stars come out over fields she planted, and thinks about the difference between justice and peace. Justice is what you fight for, what you build with evidence and testimony and sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Peace is what comes after, slowly and incompletely, in moments like this when the work is done and the night is quiet and you can finally breathe without counting the cost. She's got justice now. Has had it for a year, maintained it through threats and fires and constant pressure. Peace is still coming, still being built day by day, seed by seed, choice by choice. But it's closer than it was. And tomorrow, she'll get up and keep building it. Because that's what survivors do. That's what winners do. They keep going. Winter settles over Red Hollow like a long exhale, the kind of cold that makes everything quiet, muffled under snow that transforms the town into something almost peaceful. Almost. Lena's in the barn feeding her horse when Jacob Winters shows up in early December, his face red from cold and something else. Worry, maybe, or anger that's been burning so long it's settled into his features permanently. "We need to talk," he says without preamble. "Then come inside where it's warm." They sit at her kitchen table with coffee, and Jacob doesn't touch his cup, just stares at it like he's reading omens in the steam. "Hale's dying," he finally says. Lena goes still. "What?" "Got word from Garrison this morning. Some kind of sickness. Prison doctor says he's got maybe 3 months, probably less. They're not sure what it is exactly. Could be his heart, could be something else. But he's failing fast." Lena doesn't know what to feel. Relief? Satisfaction? The news should mean something, but mostly she just feels tired. "Why are you telling me?" "Because his lawyers are pushing for compassionate release, arguing that a dying man shouldn't spend his last days in prison. They've got politicians backing them up, making noise about mercy and dignity. He showed no mercy to anyone he destroyed. I know. But that's not how the law works sometimes. There's talk they might move him to house arrest, let him die in comfort instead of a cell." The coffee's going cold in Lena's hands. She sets it down carefully, afraid if she holds it any longer, she'll throw it. After everything. After the trial, the conviction, the year of harassment and threats, they're just going to let him go? Maybe. Garrison's fighting it, says it sets a bad precedent, but the pressure's coming from high up. People who are connected to Hale, who want to rehabilitate his image before he dies. Dead martyrs more useful than living criminal. "What can we do?" Jacob's laugh is bitter. "Nothing legal. We already played by the rules and won. If they change the rules afterward, we've got no recourse except watching it happen." They sit in silence. Outside, snow continues falling. Inside, Lena feels something shifting. Not rage exactly, but a cold clarity about how the world actually works versus how it's supposed to work. "I need to see him," she says. "What?" "Hale, before he dies. I need to see him face to face." "Why? What's that going to accomplish?" "I don't know. Maybe nothing. But I spent 6 years of my life bringing him down. And if he's about to walk free because dying men get special treatment, I need to look him in the eye and know it was still worth it." Jacob studies her. "This isn't about closure. No, it's about making sure he knows he didn't win. That even if he gets out, Even if he dies in a comfortable bed surrounded by people pretending he was respectable, at least one person will remember the truth and make sure it doesn't get rewritten. Garrison might be able to arrange a visit. Prisoner meetings are allowed under supervision. Then set it up. The request takes 2 weeks to process. Bureaucracy moves slow, and Lena spends that time working the farm and trying not to think about what she'll say when she's finally face to face with the man who destroyed her father. Christmas comes and goes. The town holds celebrations, but they're subdued. Everyone's heard about Hale's illness, about the possibility of release. The victory they fought for feels increasingly hollow. The visit is scheduled for January 8th. Lena rides to the territorial prison with Jacob, neither of them talking much. The facility is a stark stone building that looks like it was designed to crush hope. Guards process them through multiple checkpoints, searching and questioning and treating them like they're the criminals. Finally, they're led to a visiting room. Plain table, 2 chairs, bars on the windows. A guard stands in the corner watching everything. Then Hale enters. Lena almost doesn't recognize him. The man who stood confident in the street facing 5 guns is gone. In his place is someone diminished, thin, gray, moving like each step costs him. His suit hangs loose. His eyes are sunken. But when he sees Lena, something sparks there, recognition, and something darker. He sits across from her. The guard announces they have 30 minutes. "Miss Voss," Hale says. His voice is raspy, strained. "To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure? I heard you're dying." "So they tell me. Funny thing about mortality, spent my whole life building an empire, and turns out none of it transfers to the next world. Assuming there is one. I didn't come here to discuss philosophy." "Then why did you come?" Lena leans forward. "I came to make sure you understand something. You're dying, and maybe you'll get released, and maybe people will pretend you were just a businessman who played rough. But I'll remember. Everyone in Red Hollow will remember. The truth doesn't die just because you do." Hale smiles, and it's the same smile he wore in the street before the shooting started, confident despite circumstances. "You think you won something? That's sweet. Naive, but sweet. I think you're in prison, and your empire collapsed." "My empire?" He laughs, and it turns into a cough that racks his whole body. When he recovers, there's blood on his handkerchief. "Miss Voss, I was one man operating in one small territory. You think taking me down changed anything? There are a dozen men doing exactly what I did right now in towns just like yours. The system that enabled me is still there. The officials I bribed are still in power. Maybe not Carson and Tate, but others just like them. You won a battle. The war continues without me. At least Red Hollow is free of you. For now. But I give it 5 years. 10 at most. Someone new will come along, see the opportunities, start the cycle again. Because that's what people do. They see weakness and exploit it. They see resources and take them. You can't change human nature with one trial." Lena feels her hands clenching. "So we should have just accepted it? Let you keep destroying lives? I'm saying you spent 6 years of your life fighting me, and for what? A few years of breathing room before the next person comes along? Was that worth losing your husband, your peace, your anonymity? You're famous now, Miss Voss. Target painted on your back for the rest of your life. Was that a good trade?" "My husband died before I started fighting you. Don't pretend you know my story. I know enough. I know you're a woman who can't let go, who turned pain into crusade because that was easier than actually healing. You think you fought for justice, but really you fought because fighting was all you had left." The words hit harder than Lena wants to admit, because there's truth in them, however twisted. She did throw herself into this fight partly because it gave her purpose when everything else had fallen apart. "You're trying to get to me," she says quietly, "make me doubt whether it was worth it. But here's what you don't understand. Even if everything you say is true, even if someone else comes along, even if the system doesn't change, it was still worth it. Because my father deserved justice. The people you hurt deserve justice. And for whatever time Red Hollow has before the next threat, they get to live without fear of you. That matters. Does it? When you're alone on that farm, when you're watching shadows, because you know my associates are still out there, when you're wondering if every stranger is a threat, does it still matter then? Yes, because the alternative is accepting that powerful men can do whatever they want without consequence. I'd rather die fighting that than live accepting it. Hale studies her and something shifts in his expression. The smugness fades, replaced by something harder to read. Respect, maybe, or just recognition of a worthy opponent. You really believe that? I do. Then you're a fool. A brave fool, but a fool nonetheless. He leans back and suddenly he looks very tired, very old. I hope it keeps you warm at night, that righteous certainty, because it's all you're going to have when the reality sets in that nothing you did mattered in the long run. It mattered to the people whose lives you destroyed. It mattered to the families who got their land back. That's enough. Is it? When you're 40, 50, 60 years old and still looking over your shoulder, still wondering if someone's coming for revenge, still paying the price for one moment of defiant victory? I'll take that over living as a coward. The guard announces 5 minutes remaining. Hale coughs again, harder this time. When he looks back at Lena, there's blood on his lips. I'm going to die soon. Probably in here, despite what my lawyers are trying. And you know what? I'm almost grateful. Because dying means I don't have to watch the world prove me right. Don't have to see Red Hollow slide back into what it was. Don't have to witness you realizing that all your sacrifice changed nothing permanent. You're wrong. We'll see. Or rather, you will. I'll be dead. The guard signals time's up. Lena stands, and so does Hale with visible effort. One more thing, Hale says, before you leave. I want you to know I don't regret what I did. Every action I took, every deal I made, every person I crushed, I'd do it all again. Because I understood something you refused to accept. The world belongs to those who have the strength to take it. Morality is a luxury for people who've never had real power. Lena looks at him, this dying man who built an empire on suffering and still believes he was justified. That's the difference between us, she says. You think power is about taking. I think it's about giving people back what's theirs. You'll die alone, unmourned, remembered as the villain you were. I'll live knowing I fought for something that mattered. I know which life I'd choose. She walks out without looking back. The ride home is quiet. Jacob doesn't ask what was said, and Lena doesn't offer. Some conversations exist in their own space, sealed off from the world. 2 weeks later, word comes that Hale died in prison. No compassionate release, no redemptive ending, just death in a cell, alone except for a guard who probably didn't care. The town doesn't celebrate. There's no party, no declaration of final victory. People just hear the news and nod and go back to their lives. Because Hale's death doesn't change anything material. The threats might continue. New dangers might emerge. But at least this chapter is closed. Lena stands at the town memorial they built for victims of Hale's reign. Her father's name is carved there, along with dozens of others. She traces the letters with her finger and wonders what he'd think of how things turned out. Would he approve of the 6 years spent fighting, the risks taken, the prices paid? Or would he think she should have moved on, built a new life somewhere safer? She'll never know, but she likes to think he'd understand, that he'd recognize the same stubborn refusal to accept injustice that got him killed in the first place. Miss Voss? She turns to find a young woman standing there, maybe 20, with dark hair and determined eyes. Lena doesn't recognize her. I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Elena Ruiz. I'm from Santa Rosa, about 200 miles south of here. What brings you to Red Hollow? Elena hesitates, then speaks in a rush. We have a problem. A man named Garrett Cole. He's doing to our town what Hale did to yours. Buying up land through fraud, intimidating people who resist, corrupting local officials. I've been trying to fight him for 2 years, but I don't know how. Then I read the article about you in the Denver Post, about what you did here, and I thought maybe you could help, or at least tell me how you did it. Lena looks at this young woman who reminds her so much of herself 6 years ago, full of fight, but not sure how to direct it. Certain of the justice of her cause, but uncertain of the path forward. It took me 6 years, Lena says. 6 years of gathering evidence, finding witnesses, building a case piece by piece. It was hard and dangerous, and there were moments I wanted to give up. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Lena pauses. Why did you come here yourself? Why not just write a letter? Because I needed to see the person who actually won. I needed to know it was possible. Everyone in Santa Rosa keeps saying we can't beat Cole, that he's too powerful, too connected. I needed proof that people like him can actually be brought down. And there it is. The real reason Lena fought for 6 years, endured threats and fear and constant pressure. Not just for Red Hollow, but to prove that ordinary people can stand against extraordinary corruption and win. Come with me, Lena says. She takes Elena to the bank, where the town keeps records of the Hale case. Every document, every piece of evidence, every legal filing is preserved. A complete blueprint of how to take down a corrupt land baron. This is everything we did, Lena explains. The mistakes we made, the strategies that worked, the evidence that mattered most. I'll share all of it with you, but you need to understand something first. This will consume your life. It will cost you peace, probably cost you safety. People will call you crazy, obsessed, vindictive. And even if you win, it won't be clean or easy or leave you unchanged. I understand. Do you? Really? Lena looks at her hard. Because I thought I understood too, at the beginning. But understanding intellectually and living it are different things. This fight will take everything you're willing to give and demand more. It'll make you harder, more suspicious, less able to trust. You'll win, maybe, but you'll pay for it. Elena's quiet for a moment. My father lost his ranch to Cole, worked that land for 30 years, and Cole took it through a forged deed. My father died 6 months later. Heart attack, the doctor said, but I think it was a broken heart. I can't bring him back, but I can make sure Cole answers for what he's done. Even if it costs me everything, I have to try. Lena sees herself in those words. The same grief, the same determination, the same willingness to sacrifice for justice. And she realizes this is part of the legacy too. Not just beating Hale, but showing others that it's possible, creating a roadmap that can be followed. All right, she says, then let's get to work. They spend 3 days going through everything. Lena explains how to gather evidence without tipping off the target, how to find witnesses and convince them to talk, how to build a case strong enough that even expensive lawyers can't break it, how to endure threats and maintain resolve when everything seems hopeless. Elena takes notes constantly, asks sharp questions, and Lena can see the same fierce intelligence that sustained her through the darkest parts of her own fight. On the 3rd day, as Elena prepares to leave, she turns to Lena with a question that's clearly been building. Do you regret it? Any of it? Lena considers lying, offering the clean answer about justice and doing the right thing. But Elena deserves truth, not platitudes. Sometimes, Lena admits, there are nights I lie awake thinking about the cost. The peace I'll never have, the normal life I gave up, the constant awareness that Hale's associates might still come for me. And I wonder if it would have been easier to just leave, start over somewhere else, let someone else fight this fight. But then I think about my father, about all the people who got their land back, about this conversation we're having right now, where I get to help someone else stand up to corruption. And I realize that regret isn't the right word. Grief, maybe, for what I lost, for what I can never get back. But not regret, because the alternative was accepting injustice. And I couldn't live with that. Elena nods slowly. That's what I needed to hear. Not that it's easy or that everything works out perfectly, but that it's possible. That the fight is worth fighting even when the cost is high. Just remember, you get to choose how much you're willing to pay. Don't let anyone, including yourself, push you past what you can survive, because winning doesn't mean anything if you destroy yourself in the process. Elena leaves the next morning, her saddlebags full of copied documents and her head full of strategies. Lena watches her ride south and feels something unexpected. Not happiness exactly, but purpose. The fight in Red Hollow is over, but the larger fight continues. And now she's part of it in a different way. Not the warrior, but the advisor, sharing hard-won knowledge with the next generation of fighters. Spring comes to Red Hollow with tentative warmth. The fields green up. The town continues its slow rebuilding. New families move in, drawn by word that this is a place where people stood up to corruption and won. They don't know the full cost, don't understand the complexity, but their presence proves something important. What happened here matters beyond just Red Hollow. The town council meets in April to discuss the future. They've been operating under emergency protocols for over a year, and it's time to establish more permanent governance. We need to think about what comes after us, Thomas says. He looks older than he did 2 years ago, worn down by the responsibility of leadership. Make sure the systems we put in place outlast the people who built them. Elections, Sarah suggests, real ones on a regular schedule. So power never concentrates in one person or group for too long. They spend weeks drafting a new town charter. It includes provisions for regular elections, term limits, financial transparency, and mechanisms for removing officials who abuse power. It's not perfect, no system is, but it's designed with the lessons of Hale's reign in mind. The charter is adopted by unanimous vote in May. Red Hollow becomes one of the first towns in the territory with formal democratic governance and anti-corruption measures built into its founding documents. Lena watches the vote with quiet satisfaction. This is the real victory. Not just defeating Hale, but building something better in the aftermath. Creating systems that make it harder for the next Hale to take root. She's walking home from the vote when she runs into Marcus Webb. He's been quieter lately, less involved in town affairs, focusing on his blacksmith work and staying out of politics. "You leaving the council?" she asks. "Thinking about it. I'm good at fixing broken things, not preventing them from breaking in the first place. Figure I'll do more good shoeing horses than arguing about governance structures." "Nothing wrong with knowing your strengths." Marcus kicks at a rock. "I wanted to thank you for what you did, starting all this. I know it cost you, and I know it's not over. But my shop's mine again. I can work without looking over my shoulder. That's because of you." "It's because of everyone who stood together." "Maybe. But you're the one who started it, who showed us it was possible." He pauses. "You ever think about what's next? For you personally?" Lena hasn't. Not really. She's been so focused on the fight and its aftermath that she hasn't considered what life looks like when the emergency ends and normal living begins. "I'll keep working the farm," she says. "Maybe help other towns dealing with what we dealt with. Beyond that, I don't know." "That's fair. Just don't forget to actually live, you know? You've spent so long fighting that you might not remember how to do anything else." His words stay with her. That night, alone in the farmhouse, she takes inventory of her life. The farm is producing. The town is stable. The threats have mostly faded. For the first time in 6 years, she's not in immediate crisis, and she has no idea what to do with that. The realization is unsettling. She's defined herself by opposition for so long, first grieving her father, then fighting Hale, then defending against retaliation, that she's forgotten who she is when she's not fighting something. She starts small, reads books she's been meaning to get to, visits with neighbors without it being about council business or threat assessment. Plants flowers alongside the vegetables, something purely for beauty instead of survival. It feels strange, indulgent almost, like she doesn't deserve rest while others are still fighting their own battles. But slowly, incrementally, she remembers what it's like to live instead of just survive. Summer brings word from Elena Ruiz. She's made progress in Santa Rosa, gathered evidence, recruited witnesses, contacted federal authorities. The fight is far from over, but it's begun, and she credits Lena's guidance with making it possible. Other letters arrive too, from people in other towns facing similar corruption, asking for advice, for strategies, for proof that ordinary people can win against extraordinary power. Lena answers each one carefully. She doesn't promise victory or minimize the difficulty, but she shares what worked, what failed, what lessons Red Hollow learned the hard way. And she encourages them to fight, because the alternative is accepting a world where power makes right. She's become something she never intended, a symbol, a proof of concept, evidence that the system can work if people are willing to fight for it. It's exhausting, but it's also meaningful in a way that surprises her. Fall arrives with harvest and reflection. Lena's fields produce better than last year. She's learning, slowly, how to be a farmer instead of just someone who works land. The town celebrates Harvest Festival with genuine joy, and for the first time in years, Lena attends without scanning for threats. She's at the festival, watching children play games and adults share food, when she sees a familiar figure at the edge of the crowd. Colt Mercer sits on his horse, watching the celebration like he's observing something from another world. When he sees Lena looking, he dismounts and walks over. "Heard about Hale," he says without preamble. "He died in prison a few months back." "Good. Saves me having to worry about him buying his way out." They walk away from the crowd, toward the edge of town where they can talk without being overheard. "What brings you back?" Lena asks. "Curiosity, mostly. Wanted to see how things turned out, whether it stuck or whether the whole thing fell apart once the immediate threat was gone. Still here, Still standing, built some systems to make sure the next person like Hale has a harder time taking root. Colt nods, looking around at the rebuilt town. You did good, better than most. Usually when I come back to places I've helped, they've either collapsed or turned into something worse. This is different. That's because we didn't just fight Hale. We built something to replace what he destroyed. That's the part most people miss. Winning isn't enough. You have to create something better in the aftermath. Smart. He pauses. You look different, less like you're expecting attack every second. Still expecting it, just not letting it control me anymore. They stand in comfortable silence, watching the celebration. I got a letter, Colt finally says. From a woman in Santa Rosa, Elena Ruiz, said you helped her start fighting corruption there. That true? I gave her the roadmap. She's doing the work. And there are others? Other towns? Other fights? A few. Word spreads. People hear that Red Hollow stood up to Hale and won, and they start thinking maybe they can stand up to their own local tyrants. Colt's expression is hard to read. That's dangerous. Making yourself a symbol. Symbols become targets. I'm already a target. Might as well make it count for something. This isn't what I intended when I helped you. Thought I'd come in, solve the immediate problem, move on. Didn't expect you to turn it into a movement. It's not a movement. It's just people helping people, sharing strategies, proving it's possible. That's what movements are. Lena looks at him. Does that bother you? I don't know. Maybe. I solve problems and leave. Don't stick around to see what grows in the aftermath. Seeing this, seeing what you built, makes me wonder if I should change that approach. You considering staying somewhere? Colt laughs, and it's genuine. No, that's not who I am. But maybe I should pay more attention to the aftermath. Make sure the fights I finish actually lead somewhere, instead of just creating temporary gaps before the next person fills them. You could do that from here. Set up something permanent. Coordination between towns, sharing resources and strategies. You know more about fighting corruption than anyone I've met. That's your fight now, Miss Voss, not mine. I'm still better at the dramatic entrance than the patient building. The offer stands, if you ever want it. Appreciate that. He moves toward his horse. I should go. Got word about a situation in Wyoming that needs looking into. Always west, Lena observes. Always something. He mounts up, looking down at her. You're going to be all right. You know that? Getting there. No, you're already there. You just haven't realized it yet. He tips his hat. Take care of yourself, and keep doing what you're doing. World needs more people who refuse to accept that power makes right. He rides out, and Lena watches until he disappears. She knows she won't see him again. Men like Colt Mercer are forces of nature. They appear, change everything, and vanish. You don't get to keep them, but you get to keep what they helped you build. She returns to the festival and finds herself pulled into conversation with Thomas and Sarah. They're discussing plans for a school expansion, debating whether to build more classrooms or invest in better teachers. It's normal, mundane. The kind of civic discussion that happens in towns where the immediate crisis is past and people can focus on incremental improvement instead of survival. Lena contributes her thoughts, but part of her mind is elsewhere, thinking about Elena and Santa Rosa, about the other people fighting their own battles against corruption, about the network that's forming, unplanned and organic, of ordinary people who refuse to accept injustice. That's the real legacy of Red Hollow's fight. Not just defeating Hale, but proving that defeat is possible. Creating a template others can follow. Showing that ordinary people working together can challenge extraordinary corruption and win. It won't always work. Some fights will fail. Some people will pay terrible prices for standing up. But even the failures will teach lessons. Even the defeats will inspire the next attempt. That's how change happens, not through single dramatic victories, but through accumulation. Each fight making the next one slightly more possible. Each victory proving that the system can work if people are willing to fight for it. As winter approaches again, 2 years now since Colt Mercer first rode into Red Hollow, Lena takes stock of what's been built. The town is stable, growing cautiously. The new governance systems are working, not perfectly, but well enough. The farm is productive. Her name is known across the territory as someone who can help people fight corruption. She's not the same person she was 6 years ago. That version of herself died with her father, or maybe during the long years of gathering evidence, or perhaps in the moment when she watched Hale led away in chains. What remains is someone harder but also clearer. Someone who understands that justice isn't given, it's built. That peace isn't the absence of conflict, but the result of winning the right conflicts. That the only way to prevent powerful men from crushing ordinary people is for ordinary people to stand together and refuse to be crushed. These aren't easy truths. They don't make for simple answers or comfortable living, but they're real. And Lena has learned that reality, however harsh, is better than comfortable delusion. She stands on her porch one evening in late November, watching snow begin to fall. The same snow that fell when this all started, but everything else is different. The land is hers. The town is free. The fight continues in other places, but here, now, there's something approaching peace, not perfect peace. She still checks locks twice, still scans strangers for threat, still wakes sometimes from dreams where Hale isn't dead and none of it mattered. But increasingly, there are moments like this. Quiet evenings where the world is just snow and silence and the knowledge that she fought for something real and won. That's enough. It has to be enough. Because the alternative, accepting that corruption is inevitable, that powerful men are untouchable, that ordinary people should just endure injustice quietly, is a world she refuses to live in. So she'll keep fighting, in whatever form the fight takes, keep helping people who reach out, keep proving that the system can work, keep building the kind of world her father would have wanted to see. And somewhere out west, Colt Mercer rides toward another town that's breaking, another person running out of time, another wrong that needs righting. He'll never know the full extent of what he started here, never see all the fights his intervention made possible, never understand that he's not just solving immediate problems, he's proving to people that solutions exist. That's his legacy. Not the dramatic confrontations, but the quiet permission he gives ordinary people to believe they can fight back. And Lena Voss stands in the home that's finally, truly hers, watching snow fall on land her father worked and she reclaimed, and thinks about the difference between winning and victory. Winning is what happened in the street when Colt faced down 5 guns. What happened in the courtroom when the jury said guilty. What happened when Hale died alone in his cell. Victory is this: the rebuilt town, the new systems, the people in other places who are fighting because Red Hollow proved it's possible. The accumulation of small improvements that might, eventually, add up to real change. She didn't just want to beat Hale, she wanted to build something better. And looking at Red Hollow now, imperfect, struggling, but free and growing, she thinks maybe she did. The snow falls heavier now, covering everything in white. Tomorrow she'll wake up and keep working. The farm, the town, the larger fight against corruption that never quite ends. But tonight, in this moment, she allows herself something she hasn't felt in 6 years. Hope. Not the desperate hope of someone fighting against overwhelming odds, but the earned hope of someone who fought and won and built something that might outlast her. That's the real victory. That's what makes all of it, the fear, the struggle, the cost, worth it. And in the morning, when she wakes to a world covered in new snow, she'll start again. Building, fighting, proving that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they refuse to accept that wrong is inevitable. Because someone has to, and she's learned she can be that someone. That's enough. It's everything.